What would you do if you woke in a field of bones, starving half naked and trapped in a dynasty about to collapse? Lian had no family, no identity, and not even a bowl for free porridge. Yet a voice inside his mind had already placed an army and mountains of food within reach. By the time Bian Liang understood that this strange young refugee was not ordinary, the people watching his courtyard had already learned to fear the Black Riders hidden in the dark. His name is Li Yan. He woke up to the worst smell he had ever experienced. When he opened his eyes, he realized his clothes were gone. He was lying on hot ground in just his underwear. Two skinny women were trying to steal what was left of his things. He grabbed what he could and put it on quickly. The pants were ripped, missing one leg below the knee. Then he looked around and his blood went cold. He was in the middle of ruins. There were tiny broken shelters everywhere made from old mats and rotten wood. The ground was covered in dirty water and waste. Flies buzzed in thick clouds. Near a dry ditch he saw skeletons. Some still had dried skin on them. Dogs were chewing on the bones. He had no idea where he was. People around him were talking, but he could not understand them. It sounded like some kind of dialect he had never learned. He did not know the place, the year, or anything. He only knew he was starving. He walked toward the city gate and found monks from Shaolin Temple handing out porridge from big pots. He got in line, but when it was his turn, the monk asked for his bowl. He did not have one. He turned him away. He watched others drink their porridge and walked off with nothing. He tried to enter the city, but a guard blocked him with a spear. "No refugees allowed," he said. He made fun of his short hair, calling him a monk or a beggar. He could not argue. Then something changed. A sharp pain hit his head, and suddenly he could understand everyone around him. A voice spoke inside his mind. Some kind of system had bonded to him. It gave him two powers. He could summon a powerful armored rider once a day, and he could sign in daily for rewards. His first sign-in gave him 10 tons of rice stored in a special space he could access any time. As night fell, he walked away from the refugee camp and found a wide, quiet river. He sat on a stone by the water and tried to piece things together. Shaolin Temple meant he probably in Kaifeng, but what year, what dynasty, he wasn't sure yet. He had no bowl, no proper clothes, and no idea what was coming. But he had the system now. He decided to stop worrying and start figuring things out. Whatever this world had in store, he was ready to face it. He sat by the river and decided to test the system. He focused his mind and pulled out a bag of rice, 50 kilograms, real and heavy. It landed on a rock with a thud. He opened it and started eating the raw grains. They were hard and crunchy, but slightly sweet. It was better than nothing. While chewing, he tried to figure out what era he was in. Shaolin Temple had existed since the Northern Qi dynasty and lasted through the Tang 5 dynasties, Song, Ming, and Qing. That didn't narrow things down much. He counted the 5 dynasties on his fingers. Later Liang, later Tang, later Jin, later Han, later Zhou. 5 dynasties in just over 50 years. How was he supposed to tell which one this was? Then the mosquitoes came. They swarmed his face, arms, legs, and neck. He slapped and scratched, but the bites kept coming. It was unbearable. Then he remembered something from the system symbiosis. He could share the puppet's abilities, including its defense. He activated it right away and the itching vanished completely. A mosquito landed on his hand but couldn't even pierce his skin. He stood there laughing like a madman while they tried and failed to bite him. He tested his strength next. The 50-kilogram bag of rice felt light as a pillow. He could lift it easily with one hand. Then he pulled out the weapons. First a tang blade, straight with a slight curve, beautiful under the moonlight. The moment he held it, fighting techniques flooded into his body. He swung it a few times and every move felt natural, like he had trained for years. Next came a small black crossbow. He loaded a bolt and shot it at a tree. It punched clean through the trunk and cracked the rock behind it. The bolt came back to his system undamaged. The power was incredible. He also tried the spear, about 3 or 4 meters long. Skills from mounted combat filled his mind, but on foot it felt too long and awkward. It was meant for horseback. He started thinking about what to do next. He could become some kind of outlaw leader in the wilderness, or he could go into the city, sell rice, and live comfortably. He chose the city, but he needed an identity and a believable story first. He also needed to figure out who was emperor and whether there was a war going on. He tried to store the rice bag back into the system, but it wouldn't work. Only the puppet's equipment could go back in. Once regular items came out, they stayed out. That was annoying. He leaned the rice bag against a rock and used it as a pillow. Even with the shared defense keeping him safe from cold, and bugs, the dark night, and strange sounds in the reeds still felt creepy. He dozed off half asleep until he heard footsteps. Two people stepping quietly over gravel, getting closer. He kept his eyes shut and controlled his breathing, pretending to sleep. The shared abilities had sharpened his senses too. They stopped right behind him. One whispered that his clothes looked unusual and would sell for a good price. The other said he'd been watching him all day. Then came two words, "Do it." He rolled away just in time. A wooden stick smashed down right where his head had been hitting the rice sack instead. Two men, one tall and thin, one short and stocky, came at him with sticks. He summoned the puppet. A black war horse appeared out of nowhere carrying an armored rider in full black armor. The rider swung the flat of his blade twice. Both men went flying and hit the ground hard. He had the rider search them. They had a few copper coins, some dry bread, a chipped knife, and rope. He kept the coins and had the rider tie them up. He woke them and started asking questions. The tall one said they'd followed him because his clothes looked expensive. Then he told him what they really were: human traffickers. They sold men to mines, women to workshops, and children to whoever would pay. Children were the easiest to sell. He asked what year it was. He said it was the 7th year of Tianfu. The emperor was sure Zhongguowei, king of Qi. That's when it clicked. This was the later Jin dynasty. He remembered from a TV show the Khitans were about to invade from the north. He had arrived right before everything fell apart. He asked them how to get into the city. They gave him 3 options: register as a resident, which took days or weeks, get hired by a wealthy family who could vouch for him, or sneak in during a guard shift change with some money. None were easy. After they told him everything, they begged him to let them go. He smiled and said, "Okay." The rider cut their ropes. They scrambled up and started running. Then he called out to them. The tall one turned around. He raised his crossbow and shot him in the back. He dropped without a sound. The short one screamed and tried to dive into the reeds. He reloaded, aimed, and fired again. He fell at the edge of the reeds and didn't move. He stood there holding the crossbow. His hands were shaking. Just moments ago they'd been talking, begging, running. Now they were gone. He had killed them myself. He stared at the river for a long time. Then he said it out loud. Human traffickers. They sold people, men, women, children. They deserved it. He said it again until his hands stopped shaking. He had the rider throw the bodies into the river. 2 splashes, some ripples, then nothing. He sat back down against the rice sack and thought about tomorrow. He needed to get into the city. He tried sneaking in during the guard change. If that didn't work, he had figured something else out. He leaned back and closed his eyes. The shared abilities kept him safe from the cold and the bugs, but his heart felt hollow. The look on the tall man's face when he turned around kept replaying in his mind. He told myself one more time, human traffickers. This time his voice was calm. He let the darkness take him. The river kept flowing quietly beside him. He woke up with the sun in his face. The night was still standing guard, perfectly still. He dismissed him and he vanished like he never existed. He looked terrible. His shirt was covered in mud and dried blood. His pants had only one leg, and his shoes were caked with dirt. He went to the river, washed his face, and cleaned his shoes until they looked decent again. He lifted the 50-kilogram rice sack onto his shoulder with one hand. It felt like nothing. He walked back toward the city gate. The refugees watched him pass, their eyes locked on the sack. Some of the stronger young men shifted their feet, but when they saw how easily he carried it, nobody came forward. Near the gate, a group of 5 or 6 men surrounded him. Their leader had a scar running across his face. He told him he should share his rice with the hungry people around us. He set the sack down, opened it, and let some rice fall through his fingers. "Do you want it?" he asked. The scarred man nodded. He tied the sack back up and said, "Come and get it." He rushed at him. His body moved on its own. The combat skills from the system kicked in. He dodged, punched him in the stomach, then kneed him in the face. He went down bleeding. He dropped the rest of them in seconds, 1 punch each. After that, the crowd went quiet. He crouched beside the scarred man, held out a handful of rice, and asked if he wanted it. This time nobody dared answer. More people gathered, over 20, including women and children, all skin and bones. He told them they could eat but had to listen to him. The scarred man Luda got up, knelt, and said they'd do whatever he told them. The others knelt too. He picked 10 people and gave each of them a handful of rice. Their hands shook as they held it. Luda's eyes turned red. He said his mother hadn't eaten in 3 days. Then a man named Zhang Wu showed up. He was the local district head, a minor official who managed the refugee area. He wore a wooden tag around his neck as proof. He was polite and curious about him. He told him a made-up story. He was Li Yan, 9th son of the Li family from the south. He had come to Bianliang with a trade caravan, but soldiers attacked us in the night. The caravan's scattered goods were lost, and all he had left was this bag of rice. Zhang Wu listened and nodded, though he could not tell if he fully believed him. Then he offered to help him get into the city. Without papers, he could not pass the gate on his own. But as district head, he could register him as a temporary resident and vouch for him. The pass would last 7 days. He asked what it would cost. He glanced at his rice sack. He smiled, picked it up, and handed the whole thing to him, still more than half full. His hands grabbed it before his mouth could finish saying he couldn't accept it. Before he left, Lu Da and the others knelt again. One said his little girl was 7 and starving. Another said his father had fainted from hunger the night before. They were crying, thanking him, pressing their foreheads to the ground. He told them to get up and meet him at the same spot tomorrow. Then he followed Zhang Wu to the gate. He nodded to the guard. The guard glanced at him and let us through. He stepped into the cool shadow of the city wall. Behind him, the voices of the refugees slowly faded away. He stepped through the gate tunnel and into the city. The cool shade felt good after the burning sun. The view opened up a dirt road lined with low houses, some with thatched roofs, a few with tiles. He could smell cooking food, burning wood, and dried manure. It was plain, but it felt like civilization. Zhang Wu led him to a small courtyard where a clerk named Xiang Dian worked. He was an older man with curling mustaches. Zhang Wu told him his cover story, that he was a merchant from the south who'd lost his papers after soldiers attacked his caravan. The clerk wrote everything down and gave him a small wooden tag, a temporary residence permit good for 7 days. It had his name, the date, and a red seal on it. Then Xiang Dian leaned in and asked if he had more rice. He'd tasted what Zhang Wu brought and said it was as good as tribute rice. He offered him a deal if he brought him more rice. Like that, he could get him full permanent residency in just 1 day instead of the usual months of waiting. He thanked him and said he had come back in a few days. Zhang Wu walked him out and told him about the different neighborhoods. Nanshu and Wu Ward, near the gate, was the cheapest, full of laborers and drifters. Tongya and Tongji wards were busier with shops and inns. Xinhua Ward, further north, was where the rich people lived. We said goodbye at a crossroads. He walked north through the streets. The city was alive. Peddlers carrying goods, a vegetable seller squatting by the road, children chasing a dog, people bargaining at stalls. Some people glanced at his strange clothes, but nobody bothered him. His stomach was growling. He found a tiny roadside stall run by an old man. He sold flat breads for 5 coins and soup for 3. He counted his coins: 43 small Tianfu coins and 2 larger Kai Yuan coins from the Tang dynasty, 45 total. He paid 13 coins for 2 flatbreads and a bowl of soup. The flatbreads were tough and dry, grayish-white, about the size of his palm. The soup was just boiled greens with almost no salt, but it was hot, and the warmth spread through his whole body. He ate slowly, savoring every bite. The old man told him about the area, who lived where, what each ward was like. He guessed he was from the south just by looking at his clothes and shoes. He stuck with his story and said he was from Jianling Prefecture. After he finished eating, he headed north. With food in his stomach, his steps felt steadier. He touched the wooden residence tag in his pocket. He silently repeated the ward names as he walked. Nanchuan, Tongya, Tongji, Xinhua. Getting his bearings in this new world. The streets got busier, the noise grew louder, and he blended into the crowd. Nobody gave him a second look. He ducked into a quiet alley and checked his system. The daily sign-in reward came through 10 tons of white sugar. In this era, sugar was a luxury. It was worth far more than rice. He pulled out 1 bag, 50 kilograms, and headed north to Tongya Ward. A young broker named Qin Shi found him right away and offered to help. He told him he had sugar to sell and his eyes lit up. He took him to a trading shop called Tongyuan Trading House. The shopkeeper Joe tasted his sugar and went quiet. He said in 20 years of trading he'd never seen sugar this white and fine. He called it tribute quality. We haggled. He started at 3,000 coins per jin. He pushed back and we settled at 4,000. The bag weighed 80 jin, so the total came to 320,000 coins. He took payment in silver, 6 large ingots, a few smaller pieces, and some bits. It was a heavy little bundle. Joe asked if he had more. He smiled and said he had come back, but he noticed something in his eyes. Not just interest, but calculation. He needed to be careful and spread his sales across different buyers. He gave Qin Shi a piece of silver as a referral fee, then had him take him to a clothing shop. He bought a plain linen outfit, a short brown jacket and trousers for 220 coins. He changed right there in the shop, and finally looked like he belonged in this era. He kept his old clothes folded inside his jacket. Qin Shi helped him find an inn in Tongji Ward, the Gal Family Inn. A small, clean courtyard with pomegranate trees. A private room cost 100 coins a night. He paid for 2 nights and went inside. The room was tiny, a wooden bed, a straw mat, a thin quilt, a table with a teapot, but everything was clean. After the refugee camp, it felt like heaven. He collapsed on the bed and fell asleep. When he woke up, it was afternoon. His stomach was growling. He found a food stall on the main street and ordered lamb broth, 2 flatbreads, and a cup of wine. The lamb soup was rich and salty with soft, fatty meat at the bottom. The flatbread was golden and crispy with sesame seeds. It was the best meal he had had since arriving. The wine, though sour, cloudy, and weak, worse than beer, but it quenched his thirst. He went back to the inn and planned his next moves. Sell the sugar in small batches, find a yard to rent, and bring Lu Da's group into the city. The next morning he met Uncle Gal's son, De Lang, a young man who worked at the local patrol office. He was polite and offered to help if he needed anything. Good to know someone with connections. He ate breakfast at a stall, thick millet porridge, a crispy mixed flour pancake, and pickled vegetables. While eating, he overheard that grain prices were rising again. He filed that away. Then he headed south back outside the city. All 10 men were waiting Luda and the rest. They looked better than before with some color in their faces. He led them to the riverbank and pulled 4 bags of rice out of the system when no one else was looking. They stared confused about where the rice came from, but nobody asked too many questions. He could see them fighting their instincts, hungry eyes on the rice, but gratitude and loyalty holding them back. Lu Da spoke up first. We would never do anything bad. Please trust us." He had them carry the rice to the city gate, then went inside to find Zhang Wu. He told him he wanted to register all 10 men as floating residents so they could enter the city and work for him. Zhang Wu glanced at the rice and smiled wide. 4 bags was more than enough to cover it. We went to see the clerk Xiaolan. He stroked his beard, called it a big plan, but agreed without trouble. Zhang Wu started recording each man's name, age, and hometown. Everything was falling into place. After the registration was done, the clerk Xiaolin handed out wooden tokens to all 10 men. Lu Da held his like it was made of gold. He thanked Xiaolin and he told him to come back anytime he needed help. He took the group to the old man's food stall and bought them all cakes and soup. At first they ate carefully, taking small bites. Then hunger took over and they started shoving food into their mouths, barely chewing. He sat and watched them eat. He paid the bill without saying much. Next he took them to the clothing shop. The woman sold him 10 sets of rough hemp clothes at 80 coins each. They changed right there in the shop. They were still skinny, but at least they didn't look like homeless wanderers anymore. Then he bought 2 elm wood carts from a carpenter, 600 coins each. Sturdy wheels oiled for strength. He loaded 1 cart with a bag of sugar for his system and led the group to a shop called Sea-High Goods Store. The shopkeeper tasted the sugar and his eyes went wide. We settled on 4 taels per jin, same price as before. 80 jin, 320 taels of silver. The sale went smoothly. Afterward, he took everyone to the lamb soup stall. He ordered 11 bowls of mutton soup, 33 flat breads, and wine for each person. They sat there staring at the food, afraid to start. He told them to eat. Luda took a sip, burned his mouth, but kept drinking. Then he tried to speak. His voice cracked. Wang started crying quietly, tears dripping into his soup. Luda finally got the words out. They hadn't eaten a real meal in over a year. He said his mother ate the rice from yesterday and could sit up again. He said his life belonged to him now. He tried to kneel, but he stopped him and told him to sit down and eat. They finished everything. All 33 flatbreads, all the soup, all the wine. Some cried while they ate. He walked them to the city gate with the empty carts and told them to meet him at the same place tomorrow morning. Then he went to find Qin Shi. He told him he needed to rent a yard big enough for people and storage. He showed him a few places. The first 3 weren't right. Too small, too run down, or missing rooms. The 4th one was different. It was in Tongji Ward, owned by an old scholar who was moving in with his son. The yard was clean and quiet. 3 main rooms, 2 side rooms, a kitchen, and a firewood shed. Best of all, there was a water well and a jujube tree full of green fruit. He stood under the tree and looked down into the well. The water was deep and clear. The old man wanted 200 coins a month with half a year paid up front. He tried to bargain, but he wouldn't budge. He agreed and told him he had come back tomorrow morning to sign the contract. He gave Qin Shi 20 coins for his help and headed back to the inn. That evening he sat on his bed and sorted through his money. He had made another 320 taels from the sugar sale, spent some on clothes carts and meals. Tomorrow he needed about 7 taels for the rent deposit. He had plenty of supplies left in the system, enough sugar and rice to keep going for a long time. Once he signed the lease tomorrow, he could move out of the inn and into his own place. Somewhere quiet, out of the way, where he could come and go without drawing attention. He lay back on the bed. Outside it was dark. The wind rustled through the trees. Tomorrow's problems could wait until tomorrow. He woke up at dawn and checked the system. Today's sign-in reward was 10 tons of iodized salt. Salt was even more valuable than rice or sugar. Every household needed it. He checked his inventory. 395 bags of rice, 198 bags of sugar, 200 bags of salt, and 4 black armored puppet knights stored up over 4 days. 4 invincible warriors ready whenever he needed them. Just thinking about it made him smile. He ate a quick breakfast at the old woman's stall, then headed to the government office to sign his rental contract. The chubby clerk recorded everything, stamped it, and gave him the paperwork. He paid 7 taels and 2 coins of silver plus a small commission. The yard was officially mine. He went outside the city to meet Lu Da and the others. They were already waiting in their new clothes, looking much better than before. He pulled out 11 bags of rice from the system. 1 bag he split among them to take home to their families. The other 10 went onto the carts. Then he did something important. He went to get real household registration for all of us. Not temporary passes, but official residency. Jiang Wu took him up the city wall to meet Commander Zhu Tao, who controlled the south gate. He handed him 5 taels of silver without any fuss. He pocketed it, patted his shoulder, and told him he could come and go through his gate freely from now on. Good connection to have. At the gate, he gave the guards a bag of rice to keep them friendly. Then we went to Zhao Lin's office with 9 bags of rice. His eyes lit up when he saw them. He poured him tea and chatted like we were old friends. Zhao Lin took us to the Kaifeng County office, a big courtyard with stone lions out front. Inside, a clerk named Joe registered each of us one by one. When he asked about his short hair, he told him he had had a skin disease and shaved his head. He didn't push it. He wrote out his registration on white hemp paper. Li Yan, age 20, from Jianling Prefecture, now an official resident of Bien Li Yan. There was a red county seal at the bottom. Lu Da and the others got their papers too. They held them like they were holding their own lives. After that, he led everyone to his new yard. It looked good. 3 main rooms facing south, 2 side rooms on each wing, a kitchen with a brick stove, a firewood shed, a well, and the jujube tree full of green fruit. He put Lu Da and 5 men to work cleaning while he took the rest shopping. We bought everything he needed to set up a home. Iron pots, bowls, chopsticks, water buckets, brooms, cotton quilts, pillows, oil, salt, soy sauce, vinegar, charcoal, candles, and flint. It all cost a few thousand coins, but he had plenty of silver. By sunset, the yard was clean and organized. Pots in the kitchen, bedding on the bed, supplies on the stove. It felt real, his own place. He gave Lu Da 2 taels of silver and told him to take the group out for dinner. Buy some things for their families and meet him by the river tomorrow morning. He tried to refuse the money. He made him take it. He knelt again, eyes red, and the others followed. He told them to get up and go. He watched them leave, then stood alone under the jujube tree. The breeze rustled the leaves. A few green jujubes swayed on the branches. The yard was quiet. He went into the side room, lay down on the bed, and stared at the ceiling. Everything was falling into place. He had a home, money, supplies, people, and connections. But lying there in the silence, he felt one thing, clearly boredom. He woke up in his own house for the first time. Sunlight filled the room through the paper windows and birds sang outside. It felt good. He checked in with the system. Today's reward: 500 live black goats, about 20 kilograms each. He laughed, imagining them all crammed into his little yard. Luckily, they stayed in the system. When he opened his front door, all 10 men were standing in a neat line. Luda said they'd arrived at dawn. They'd been waiting 2 hours without eating or drinking, just so they wouldn't be late. He shook his head and told them to come in. He took everyone to the old woman's stall for breakfast. 11 people cleaned her out. She smiled and even gave us a small discount. After eating, he went to a blacksmith near Tongya Ward. He bought 10 curved knives, one for each man at 220 coins each. Good iron, practical for self-defense or work. The blacksmith pulled him aside and warned him quietly. The new emperor was about to tighten control over salt and iron. Prices would go up and private sales might be banned soon. That got his attention. He had 10 tons of salt sitting in his system. He took 2 small bags of rice to shopkeeper Joe at Tongya Trading House. He tasted it, loved it, and offered 300 coins per bushel. One bag of his rice was worth about 2,250 coins, over 2 taels of silver. He realized how expensive grain was in this era. The refugees outside were starving, while rice inside the city cost a fortune. Joe also confirmed what the blacksmith said about salt. The old emperor had kept salt rules loose, but the new ruler, Shur Chongwei, was reforming the system. From now on, all salt had to go through the government with heavy taxes added. Prices would probably double. He arranged for Joe to send a cart to his yard that evening to pick up 10 bags of rice and 1 bag of sugar. Fair prices, no tricks. Then he took the group to the sheep market in the east part of the city. The place was loud and smelly, pens full of animals, vendors shouting, buyers haggling. Mutton cost about 60 coins per jin. Lu Da explained that sheep meat was for upper-class people, while pork was considered low quality. He looked around, got a feel for the prices, and left. Back at the yard, he had Lu Da go to the firewood room and pack 1 jin of salt for each man to take home. They stared at the salt with red eyes but said nothing this time. They were learning. He did not like emotional scenes. They took their salt, gave him a long look, and left quietly. Then he went to find Qin Shi. He lived in a broken-down house near the edge of Nanchuan Ward with his 17-year-old sister, who earned a little money spinning hemp and sewing for neighbors. On a good month, Qin Shi made a few hundred coins as a broker. On bad months, nothing. He looked at him and said, "Qin Shi, he want to hire you. 3 taels of silver a month to run errands for him?" He froze. Three taels. He nodded. Qin Shi couldn't speak for a long time. 3 taels of silver a month was more than half a year's income for him. He was about to kneel, but he stopped him. He told him there was one more thing. He needed someone to clean and look after his yard. If his sister was willing, he had pay her 2 silver coins a month and give her a small room to live in. Qin Shi's eyes went wide. He stammered that his sister was just a girl with no experience, but he told him he just needed someone to keep the place tidy. He said he trusted him. He could see what kind of person he was. He promised to bring her tomorrow morning. After that, he walked north for about half an hour until he reached the liveliest part of the city, Xiangwu Temple Lane. The temple itself was quiet, since there was no fair that day, but the lane around it was packed with people. Shops lined both sides selling food, clothes, and all kinds of goods. The noise was incredible. Shouting, bargaining, laughing, all mixed together. He stopped to watch a shirtless man doing a sword performance on the street. His skills were average, but the crowd loved it. They tossed copper coins and he happily scooped them up. Further down, he found a wrestling match inside a tent. A big, dark man fought a slim, quick one while the crowd screamed and placed bets. The big man won and the winners cheered while the losers cursed. He also found a storytelling tent. An old man in a long robe sat on a small stage, struck a wooden block, and the crowd went silent as he told tales of old generals. He listened for a while and tossed in some coins. He spent the whole afternoon just wandering, watching wrestling, listening to stories, seeing acrobats, even gambling a few times. He spent all his loose coins and it felt wonderful. As the sun went down and shops started closing, he stood at the entrance of the lane and looked back. The sunset lit up the tents and banners in gold. The crowd was thinning out. It hit him. In his old life, he killed time watching videos on his phone. Here he watched real people wrestle and tell stories. Both were entertainment, but this felt more alive. Real wins, real losses, real cheers and tears. Having money made all the difference. He did not have to starve outside the city or worry about being attacked. He could rent a yard hire, people eat meat, and wander the streets for fun whenever he wanted. On the way home, he bought 2 warm-baked pancakes from a street vendor and ate them while walking. They were soft and smelled like fresh wheat. The street lamps were coming on around him and he felt genuinely happy. When he got back to his yard, it was already dark. The jujube tree was a shadow and the well stones glowed faintly. He pushed open the door and stood in the quiet courtyard, peaceful and content. He was about to grab some food from the kitchen when he heard Lu Da's voice at the door. All 10 of them were standing outside in a line. He let them in and told them they could stay in the empty rooms of the West Wing from now on. Lu Da immediately sent 4 men to clean up the rooms, sweeping floors and laying down dry grass for bedding. He looked at the sky and thought about those 500 black goats sitting in his system. Tonight we'd eat well. He sent the other 5 to the kitchen to boil water and get the pots ready. Then he went to the firewood shed, closed the door, and pulled a goat out of the system. It appeared out of thin air, landed on all 4s, bleated, and tried to run. And he grabbed it by the horns and held on tight. When the others saw the goat, they were stunned. Nobody asked where it came from. A small man named Sun Shi stepped forward. He said he used to be a hunter and had killed sheep before. He told him to go ahead. He sharpened a knife on a stone, rinsed it, and got to work. His movements were fast and clean. One cut across the neck, blood draining into a basin with salt in it. The goat kicked a few times, then went still. Then he did something he had never seen. He made a small cut near the hoof, stuck in a thin rod, and blew air into the body. The skin puffed up and separated from the meat, making it easy to peel off in one piece. He opened the belly, removed the organs one by one, heart, liver, stomach, intestines, sorting them neatly. He cut off the head and legs, split the body along the spine, and chopped it into pieces. The whole thing was smooth and practiced. This man was no ordinary hunter. Sun Shi picked out some good cuts, rubbed them with salt, and hung them under the eaves to dry. The rest went into the big pot. He blanched. The meat once changed the water, added ginger and salt, covered the pot, and let it simmer. By now it was fully dark. We lit an oil lamp under the jujube tree. He told everyone to sit down. They hesitated at first, then sat near the wall. The pot bubbled away, and the smell of meat filled the yard. Nobody spoke. They all stared toward the kitchen, swallowing hard. He broke the silence and asked Lu Da how they'd all ended up in this place. Lu Da told him his story first. He was from Ha-on. A drought hit in the 4th year of Tianfu. No crops grew, so he fled. Going back meant starving to death. Wang Er was from Songzhou. Soldiers from different armies fought over his area, burned his village, and took men by force. His father was dragged away and never came back. He told it all in a flat voice like it happened to someone else. Zhao Sen came from Qinzhou. A locust plague ate everything, not a blade of grass left. His wife collapsed by the road, too weak to walk. He kept going alone until he reached beyond Liang. Sun Shi was from Shuzhou. One night, soldiers stormed his village, set fires, killed people, and took everything. He hid in a haystack all night. When he crawled out the next morning, the village was gone. Then there was Sun Shi. He'd been quiet this whole time. When he asked, he said he was from Lu Prefecture. During the Tianyu era, a long time ago, an army besieged his city for a whole year. Food ran out, people ate each other. He escaped with his father when he was 12. His father died on the road before reaching beyond Liang. The yard went silent. Only the bubbling of the pot broke the quiet. Then Sun Shi said something that surprised him. He lowered his voice and warned him to be careful. He'd noticed the rice, salt, and sugar in the firewood shed. He didn't ask where it all came from, but he said there were many eyes in this city. The shopkeeper at this trading house seemed nice, but traders talk. The warehouse clerk took his rice and smiled, but who knew what he really thought? And Jong-woo was just doing favors for money. If trouble came, he wouldn't stick around. He nodded and told him he understood. He was right. He needed to be more careful. Just then, someone knocked on the door. 3 knocks, steady and calm. Lu Da jumped up with his hand on his knife, but he waved him down. It was shopkeeper Zhou, right on time. Zhou came in with a few assistants and 2 carts. The smell of cooking mutton hit him immediately, and his eyes lit up. He invited him to stay for a bowl, but he wanted to handle business first. Lu Da and the others carried out 10 bags of rice and 1 bag of sugar from the shed. Zhou checked the rice, grabbed a handful, chewed a few grains, and nodded. Same quality as before. Then he opened the sugar, tasted it under the lamplight, and smiled. "Good," he said, standing up. "Surely let's settle the bill." Shopkeeper Zhou squatted down with his little abacus and ledger, clicking away. The rice came to 22 taels and 5 chin of silver. The sugar was calculated separately. He checked his math in his head. It was right. He counted out the payment and handed it over. He took the money inside while his assistants loaded the rice and sugar onto the carts. Before leaving, Zhou sniffed the air again and glanced at his steaming pot of lamb. He offered him a bowl, but he said he needed to deliver the goods tonight. He bowed and left, but not before his eyes swept around the yard, lingering on the firewood shed, the west wing, and the jujube tree. After the door closed, Lu Da came over quietly and mentioned that look Zhou gave the yard. He nodded and told him it was nothing, but he noticed it too. The lamb was finally ready. 2 big bowls of meat came out of the kitchen, steaming hot with a layer of oil on top. He sat down first and took a bite, then told the others to sit. They finally did. Nobody talked. The only sounds were chewing, slurping, and the hissing of people burning their mouths on hot meat, but refusing to spit it out. The first bowl disappeared fast. The second was nearly gone after that. Lu Da handed a piece to Sun Shi and told him to eat more since he'd done all the hard work killing the sheep. Sun Shi took it without a word. When everyone finished, their faces were flushed and full. Someone burped and quickly covered their mouth. He told them the side rooms were ready and to go sleep. Sun Shi pulled him aside and whispered that we should have people on night watch. He said shopkeeper Zhao had looked around the yard too carefully for comfort. He agreed and told him to handle it however he thought best. He set up a rotation. He leaned against the firewood shed wall. Wang Er crouched behind the gate with his knife. And Zhao San walked circles under the jujube tree. The rest went to the west wing and the lights went out. He went into the main room, didn't light a lamp, and laid down in the dark. Moonlight came through the window, casting jujube branch shadows on the paper screen. He could hear soft footsteps in the yard. Sun Shi and the others making their rounds. He closed his eyes and drifted off. Late in the night, the moon moved west and the yard grew dim. Sun Shi dozed against the shed wall with his eyes half open. The strips of mutton hung under the eaves, swaying gently in the breeze. Then Sun Shi's eyes snapped open. During the night, Sun Shi spotted 2 dark figures crouching on top of the east wall. They peeked into the yard, whispered to each other, then slipped away. Sun Shi didn't move. He just watched and waited. They didn't come back. He stayed alert until dawn, staring at that wall. He woke up to the sounds of his men already working in the yard. Someone bumped a water bucket against the well and he heard whispers. "Be gentle, the young master hasn't woken up yet." They were sweeping, fetching water, carrying firewood, and tidying the rooms. He could not fall back asleep. He checked in with the system. Today's reward, 10 tons of flour, 200 bags. He thought about what he could make. Steamed buns, noodles, dumplings, pancakes. His supplies kept growing. Rice, sugar, salt, mutton, and now flour. He got dressed and stepped outside. Lu Da rushed over, asking if the noise had bothered him. He waved him off. Someone brought him hot water to wash his face. Then he noticed 2 people standing at the open gate. Qin Shi, neatly groomed and smiling with a girl beside him. She was dark and thin, looking down at her feet, clutching her clothes with both hands. He walked over. Qin Shi introduced her as sister. She glanced up at him quickly, then dropped her eyes again. He looked at her. She was skinny with rough, sun-darkened skin and slightly prominent cheekbones. She wore a blue-gray linen dress, clean but covered in patches. Her hair was neatly tied with a wooden hairpin. An ordinary poor girl. He asked her name. She answered softly, Shun Liuya. Qin Shi explained she was the sixth child in the family. Everyone else was gone. Only she was left. Shun Liuya was just a childhood nickname. She never got a proper name. He nodded and told her to come in. He showed her around the yard. The main house where he slept, the west wing, where Lu Da's group stayed, the kitchen, the firewood shed, the well, the jujube tree. He pointed to a room in the east wing. You'll live there. Clean it up yourself. Your job is sweeping the yard, boiling water, and handling kitchen chores. She kept her head down and said quietly, Yes, sir. He turned and walked back to the main house without another word. Qin Shi's sister, Shun Liuya, settled into the yard quietly. He noticed her glance at him a couple of times, but she kept her head down and got to work without fuss. That was fine by him. He gave Lu Da and the others the day off. He told them to take the leftover lamb meat bones and skins from last night back to their families outside the city. They knelt and bowed before leaving. The yard went quiet. Then he sat down with Qin Shi and asked him about opening a shop in Bianliang. He laid it all out, and it was more complicated than he expected. First, he needed a shop with an official contract and a government seal. Then a business license from the county office listing what he sold and where. Without one, it counted as illegal trade fines or even jail. Then came the taxes. There was a residence tax on goods when they arrived, an import tax at the city gate, monthly fees for trade uniforms, and payments to keep officials happy during holidays. On top of that, he needed to pay off patrolmen and military officers for protection. And there were middlemen who controlled certain trades like grain cloth and salt. Without going through them, business couldn't happen. He listened and thought about it. Everyone in this city had their hand out. Shopkeeper Zhao Zhao Lin Zhangwu, Commander Zhu. Every connection cost money. Qin Shi asked what kind of shop he wanted to open. He shook his head and said he wasn't in a hurry. Opening a shop was too much hassle right now. Too many people to bribe, too many fees and rules. Better to keep things simple. If he needed money, he could quietly sell goods from the system. Grain prices were only going up with all the refugees around. As long as he had supplies in the system, he had be fine. Before leaving, he called out to Liu Yan in the kitchen and told her to cook her own meal from the rice and vegetables. A soft yes came back. Qin Shi and he ate breakfast at the old woman's stall, then walked north for about half an hour until we reached Xiangwu Temple. Today was completely different from his last visit. It was market day, the 3rd and 8th of each month, and the whole area was packed. Stalls stretched in every direction selling food, clothes, medicine tools, and more. People in all kinds of outfits crowded the streets. Merchants in silk, workers in short jackets, beggars in rags. The noise was incredible. Qin Shi told him this was the grand market of MANHWA Temple. Traders came from all over, and it would get even busier later in the morning. We pushed into the crowd. The first stall had 2 shirtless men wrestling while people cheered and placed bets. He watched for a bit, the same kind of show he had enjoyed yesterday. Qin Shi pointed out a fighter called He San, apparently famous around here for his strength. He watched but didn't bet, and we kept moving forward. We kept walking through the market. There was so much to see. First, a puppet show. Tiny figures jumping and dancing on a small stage, performing some old story called Mu Li Yan Rescues His Mother. The puppets were surprisingly detailed with real-looking faces and movements. Children crowded around clapping and laughing. Qin Shi told him the family running it, surnamed Lu, had been doing this for generations. Next was a big performance tent. One man did over 10 flips in a row without breaking a sweat. Another balanced an upside-down bowl on his head. A third rolled a clay pot along his arm without dropping it. The crowd went wild, tossing coins onto the stage. He threw in a few of his own. Then he heard singing. A woman in a blue dress stood under a tent, tapping a bamboo clapper and singing folk tunes. Something about a husband who left and hadn't come back in 3 years. The melody was catchy, the words were simple, and the crowd loved it. He listened for a while and tossed some coins into her bowl. We passed a dice game on the roadside. Qin Shi pulled him aside and whispered not to play. If you win, they won't let you leave. If you lose, you'll start a fight. He took his advice and moved on. Further along, a crowd circled around a cockfight. Two big roosters tore into each other, feathers flying, combs bright red. People shouted and placed bets. A black rooster was winning until the yellow one suddenly pecked it in the eye. The black one screamed and ran. The yellow rooster's fans cheered while the losers cursed. Qin said the yellow one was called General Yellow, a veteran fighter that rarely lost. After wandering through all the entertainment wrestling puppet shows, acrobats singing, gambling, cockfighting, and browsing food stalls, and cloth sellers, Qin suggested we rest at a tea house. It was tucked in an alley small and clean called Qingming Pavilion. He sat by the window. The shopkeeper listed several types of tea. He did not recognize any of them, but Qin whispered that the best was Longfong Tuan tea, a tribute tea expensive. He ordered it. The tea came in a black glazed cup, milky white with fine foam on top and a fresh aroma. He took a sip. It was a little bitter at first, then slightly sweet. Nothing like modern tea. Strange, but not bad. There were also complimentary candied plums, sweet and sour. The shopkeeper asked if he wanted to hear music. A girl came out in a light blue dress carrying a pipa. She sat in the corner, tuned her instrument, and started singing. Her voice was soft and smooth, the melody gentle. He could not understand all the words, but it sounded beautiful. He leaned back by the window, tea in one hand, candied fruit in the other. Pipa music drifting through the room and the noisy market buzzing outside. It hit him how far he had come. Just days ago he woke up half naked in a pile of filth, surrounded by bones and stray dogs. Now he was sitting in a tea house, drinking tribute tea, listening to music, watching the world go by. He took another sip, still not quite used to the taste, but he smiled. Qin leaned over and asked quietly, "Does the tea taste good?" He put the cup down and nodded. "It's okay." On the way home from the temple market, he asked Qin what people used for washing. He said common folks use soap nuts, cheap a penny for a big handful. Rich people use something called bath beans. Little white pills made from bean flour mixed with spices and herbs. They made your skin smooth and fragrant. He found a small shop that sold them. The woman behind the counter showed him 3 kinds. He picked the best, a special recipe with sandalwood, agarwood, white angelica, and peach kernels. A whole jar cost about 800 coins. Expensive but worth it. He bought it. When he got back to the yard at dusk, Xun Liuya was already there. She'd heated bath water without him even asking and set up a wooden basin in an empty room with a clean cloth beside it. He soaked in the warm water and tried the bath beans. They were fine and smooth like a gentle scrub. The sandalwood scent was calming. He washed everything: arms, legs, face, his short hair. When he finished, his skin felt smooth and soft for the first time since arriving in this world. He called Xun Liuya to take the dirty water and clothes. She stood at the door with her head down, face flushed, clutching her clothes, not leaving. He realized she was waiting, expecting him to ask her to stay the night. That's how things worked in this era. She was 17, he said softly, no need to wait. She looked up quickly, then hurried off to her room. He lay in bed staring at the ceiling. In his old life, a 17-year-old would be a high school student. Here she was serving a stranger and prepared to do whatever was expected. He cursed under his breath. Damn old society. The next morning, the system gave him 10 tons of pepper, another valuable commodity. Spices were practically as good as gold in this era. He stepped outside to find everyone already assembled. Lu Da's 10 men stood in a line. Qin was nearby, and Xun Liuya was cooking in the kitchen. She brought him warm water to wash his face and set out porridge, pancakes, and pickled vegetables under the jujube tree. While eating, he counted 11 people depending on him. They couldn't just stand around every day. He needed to give them real work. Then he remembered something. Yesterday's bath beans had triggered a memory from his old life. How ancient soap was made. Something about pig fat, alkali, and plant ash. He could not remember the exact process, but he could figure it out. If he made soap that was cheaper than bath beans and better than soap nuts, it would sell well. But he could not do it in the city. Too many eyes, too many questions. He needed a hidden spot outside Bianliang. Somewhere with water and trees, away from officials and strangers. He told Lu Dao to take some men and scout for a location. Hidden, hard to find, with mountains and water not too far from the city. He nodded and left with the group. Qin stayed behind. He told him to rest for now. The yard went quiet. Xun Liuya washed dishes in the kitchen. He stood under the jujube tree thinking. He had learned from Qin Shi that beyond Liang in the later Jin didn't really have entertainment houses. Just official ones he could not access, and private clubs that were out of reach. The best he could do was listen to music at tea houses. He thought about the bigger picture too. Every man who travels through time and stories ends up conquering kingdoms and painting maps. But honestly, that sounded exhausting. He had only ever lived in peaceful times. Trying to govern or play politics in an ancient society with barely any information seemed impossibly hard. He wasn't sure he wanted that kind of life. For now, he just wanted to figure things out one step at a time. Li Yan stood under the jujube tree, gazing at the sky with a long, thoughtful look. His neck was sore, so he called out to Qin Shi. "Let's go," Li Yan said. "Come with me to the clothing shop." Qin Shi responded and followed behind. The two left the alley and headed south toward Shiwanfeng. After walking for a while, they reached the familiar clothing shop entrance. The door was still open with a few sample clothes hanging outside. When the wind blew, the sleeves fluttered. Li Yan went inside. The woman was sitting behind the counter, sewing a garment in the light coming through the window. When she heard footsteps, she looked up and recognized Li Yan smiling. "Young master is here. What do you need this time?" Qin Shi called out beside him. "Madam Ma." Li Yan glanced at him, then looked at the woman. Her surname was Ma. Madam Ma nodded at Qin Shi and then looked at Li Yan. "Young master wants to make clothes." Li Yan nodded. "Yes, 2 sets. Use the best fabric." Madam Ma put down her work, came out from behind the counter, and led Li Yan a few steps inside, pointing to some bolts of fabric on the shelf. "Young master, look at this. This is fine hemp cloth woven tightly, comfortable to wear and not itchy. 1 bolt costs 500 coins. This is silk, smooth, shiny, and glossy. 1 bolt costs 800 coins. This is satin." She pointed to another bolt. "But you can't wear this." Li Yan was surprised. "Why not?" Madam Ma lowered her voice. "Satin and silk brocade are for the nobility. The court has issued an order. Common people are not allowed to wear satin or brocade. If you wear it outside and someone sees, they could report you to the authorities and you might get into trouble." Li Yan looked at the satin bolt. It was a pale gray with a faint sheen, really beautiful, but not suitable to wear. He silently cursed the corrupt old society. "Any more?" Madam Ma pointed to a few more bolts. "This is hemp twill coarser than silk, but sturdy. 1 bolt costs 600 coins. This is cotton silk woven with fine threads, soft and comfortable. 1 bolt costs 700 coins. If you want to make your own clothes, just buy these. But if you want ready-made garments, the shop also has some in stock." Li Yan thought for a moment. "Madam, can I order custom-made clothes like this?" Li Yan looked at the modern clothes and started to imitate their style. Grandma Ma smiled. "If the young master wants to do it this way, that's fine, but it will cost a bit more for the work." "How much?" 1 set of clothes, fabric of your choice, 200 coins for the work." Li Yan nodded. He chose half a bolt of fine hemp and half a bolt of soft silk, then asked Grandma Ma to take his measurements. Grandma Ma measured carefully, speaking the measurements aloud as she went, remembering them in her mind. After measuring, Li Yan pointed to Qin Shi. "Find a set of clothes for him. Also for his sister Xun Liuya, find a set for her too." Grandma Ma looked at Qin Shi and then at Li Yan, smiling. "Young master is very kind. I've watched over Qin Shi and his sister since they were young. They are honest people. Xun Liuya is diligent and skillful, but her life is hard." She paused and added, "I know her measurements. I made her clothes a few years ago. Don't worry, young master. I'll find a nice set for her so she can be happy." Li Yan nodded. Qin Shi stood there, feeling unsure and a little embarrassed. "Young master, how can I wear it?" Li Yan ignored him and pointed to a long, round-collared shirt hanging on the rack. "Try that one." Grandma Ma took it down and handed it to Li Yan. Li Yan looked at it. Grayish blue, made of soft silk, round collar, narrow sleeves, the length reaching below the knees with a sash at the waist. He remembered from his past life, watching Peaceful Years, that the characters seemed to wear something like this. He took off his outer coat and tried on the new shirt. It fit perfectly. The length was just right, much better than his rough hemp clothes. But the collar was tight and uncomfortable, a bit awkward. Still, it was customary to dress well, and since he had the money, he decided to buy it. "Grandma, how much is this?" Grandmama calculated. Since it's silk, it costs 600 coins plus 80 coins for the work, totaling 680 coins. Li Yan paid the money put on the new clothes and asked Qin Shi to carry the clothes made for him and his sister. Then he left the shop. Qin Shi followed behind, holding the fabric, walking a few steps, then looked at Li Yan, hesitant to speak. "What's wrong?" Li Yan asked. Qin Shi hesitated and said, "Young master, I really don't need clothes for myself and my sister." "Just wear them," Li Yan replied. "From now on, follow me. You can't be too poor looking." Qin Shi opened his mouth but couldn't speak, only holding his clothes more tightly. The two of them went to the market again. The market was next to Tongya Lane, a narrow alley full of stalls. Li Yan stopped in front of a meat stall. On the board there were several pieces of meat, red and white, looking fresh. Next to it hanging are some offal and a pig's head with half-closed eyes which looked a bit creepy. "How much for pork?" Li Yan asked. The stall owner was a strong man holding a knife and looked up at him. 70 coins per jin." "Sir, which part do you want?" Li Yan looked and pointed to a piece with some fat and lean meat. The stall owner cut a piece, weighed it, and said, 2 jin, 3 liang, 161 coins. I'll sell it to you for 160 coins. Li Yan paid and took the meat. A fishy smell hit his nose, a bit stinky. He frowned and handed the meat to Qin Shi. Qin Shi took it, eyes shining. They also bought ginger, 30 coins per jin, half a jin weight. They bought a bunch each of winter gourd and leek, 20 coins. They also bought some bean paste, homemade by the stall owner, stored in a clay jar, 40 coins per jar. When they returned to the yard, the sun was already high. Xun Liuya was drying clothes in the yard. Seeing them come in, she quickly put down her work and came over. "Sir has returned." She saw Li Yan wearing new clothes. Her eyes brightened for a moment, then she looked down again. Seeing Qin Shi holding the meat and vegetables, she paused. Li Yan handed the clothes to Xun Liuya. "Sir bought these clothes for us," Qin Shi said. Xun Liuya took the cloth, held it in her hands, looked at it again and again, then looked up at Li Yan. Her lips moved, but she couldn't speak. Li Yan didn't look at her. He pointed to the meat. "Today we eat pork." Xun Liuya was stunned for a moment and timidly said, "Sir, this pork, I don't know how to cook it. It has a strong smell. I'm afraid I won't do it well." Li Yan smiled. "I'll do it." He took the meat and went into the kitchen. Xun Liuya followed behind, standing at the door watching. Li Yan placed the meat on the chopping board, cut it into thick slices, then sliced some ginger. He added water to the pot, put the cold meat in, threw in ginger slices and boiled it over high heat. When the water boiled, a layer of white foam floated up and the fishy smell rose with the steam. He poured out the water, took out the meat, and rinsed it with warm water. Xun Liuya watched from the doorway, eyes wide open. The clean meat was sliced thinly. The pot was heated. A little vegetable oil was added, and once hot, the meat slices were put in and stir-fried. The meat changed color, released oil, and sizzled. He added a spoonful of bean paste and stir-fried it together. The aroma immediately filled the air. Xun Liuya sniffed at the doorway, eyes brightening. Li Yan asked Xun Liuya to cut the winter greens and scallions, then added them to the pot and stir-fried a few times. He added a little water, covered the pot, and let it simmer for a while. When he uncovered the pot, the smell was even stronger. He served it into a big bowl. The meat was dark with sauce, the greens were bright, the broth thick and steaming. Done. He handed this bowl to Xun Liuya, telling her to carry it to the small table under the jujube tree in the yard. Qin Shi was still standing in the yard, staring at the bowl of meat in surprise. The delicious smell drifted over and he swallowed hard. Li Yan served 3 bowls of rice, sat down and picked up his chopsticks. "Everyone sit." Qin Shi stood still. Xun Liuya also stood, head bowed. "Sit," Li Yan repeated. Only then did they sit down, sitting close to the edge of the bench, tense. Li Yan took a piece of meat and put it in his mouth. The meat still had a bit of a strong smell, and the sauce couldn't hide it. He chewed and nodded. "Eat." Qin Shi looked at him, picked up his chopsticks, and took a small piece of meat into his mouth. He chewed and his eyes widened. He took another piece bigger this time and put it in his mouth. As he chewed, his eyes turned red. Chun Liuya also took a small piece, nibbling slowly, tears dropping into her bowl. Li Yan said nothing, lowering his head to eat. The three of them sat quietly under the shade of the jujube tree, eating the meat and rice. Sometimes the sound of chopsticks hitting bowls, sometimes slurping. Chun Liuya kept her head down, tears flowing non-stop, but she kept eating. They finished most of the meat and all the rice. Chun put down his chopsticks, looked at Li Yan's lips, moving repeatedly, but could only manage to young master eye. He couldn't speak anymore. Shun Liu Yuan also put down her chopsticks, raised her head with tears on her face, but her eyes were bright. She looked at Li Yan, suddenly knelt down and bowed her head. Li Yan was surprised and quickly told her to get up. "What are you doing?" Shun Liu Yuan refused to get up, kneeling on the ground. Her voice soft but clear. "My lord, I have no parents since I was young. Grew up with my brother and have never eaten such delicious meat. My lord bought me clothes, fed me, and even gave me money each month. I don't know how to thank you, my lord." Li Yan looked at her. A dark, thin girl kneeling on the ground, tears still on her face. He felt a little pity. "Get up," he said. "Just work hard from now on." Shun Liu Yuan bowed her head again, then stood up and stepped aside. Qinshi also stood up, bowed deeply to Li Yan. "My lord, I will go back first. I will come again early tomorrow." Li Yan nodded. Qinshu looked at his sister one more time, then turned and left. Shun Liu Yuan tidied up the dishes and carried them into the kitchen. Soon the sound of washing dishes came from inside. Li Yan stood under the jujube tree, watching the sky gradually darken. Night fell. Li Yan lay on his bed, closed his eyes, and was about to fall asleep. Suddenly something in his mind moved, a warning of shared vigilance. Someone was climbing over the wall. He opened his eyes but did not move. The moon had gone down and the yard was pitch black. He listened carefully. There were very light footsteps coming from the wall corner, step by step, moving toward the main house. More than one person. His mind moved again and a mysterious armored puppet appeared. The footsteps drew closer and stopped outside the window. There was a moment of silence outside, then the sound of paper being pushed aside. Li Yan remained still. The latch was gently moved by something. Once, twice the door opened. Two dark figures slipped in. They had just straightened up and not yet taken a step when a dark object suddenly darted out from behind the door. Too fast. The shadowy figures didn't even cry out. Only muffled sounds of puff and puff were heard, and the two collapsed onto the ground like two torn cloth bags. Li Yan sat up and lit an oil lamp. Two puppets stood at the door, their face masks covering their faces, still holding weapons in their hands. Two people are lying on the ground, both dressed in black and with their faces covered. They are completely still. Li Yan walks over holding a lantern, squats down, and pulls off one person's face covering. It's a stranger's face, about 30 years old, with blood at the corner of his mouth. He then pulls off the other person's face covering. That face is also unfamiliar. He stands up and looks at the puppets. "Tie them up, wake them up." The puppets take off their belts. From the two people, tie their hands behind their backs with tight knots and secure them. Then they slap each person's face once. Ugh. One of them wakes up first, groggy, opening his eyes. When he sees the armored soldier in front of him, his eyes widen in shock and his mouth opens. The puppet reaches out and grabs his neck. The man's shout gets stuck in his throat, only a gasp coming out. Li Yan walks over with the lantern, squats down, and looks directly at him. "Speak." Li Yan's voice is calm and steady. "Who sent you here?" The two are tied up with their hands behind their backs, curled up on the ground. The one on the left with a mole on his face pants heavily, but says nothing. The younger one on the right with darting eyes dares not speak. Li Yan waits for a few moments. No one speaks. He nods and gestures to the puppet to raise his chin. One puppet steps forward, covers the man's mouth, and gently twists his little finger on his right hand. Crack, a sharp sound like breaking a dry branch. The man, muffled, can't shout. His body suddenly jerks, sweat breaks out on his forehead, and his eyes nearly pop out. The younger one watching nearby turns pale instantly. He opens his mouth, then closes it tightly, biting his teeth. Li Yan looks at him. "Say it." The young man's Adam's apple moves as he swallows, but he still doesn't speak. Li Yan nods again. Another puppet steps in front of the young man, covers his mouth, and grips his little finger. Ugh, ugh, ugh! The young man struggles desperately, twisting his body and kicking his feet, but the puppet holds him tightly, unable to move. Crack, another sharp sound. The young man's face turns bright red and then suddenly pale. Tears and snot stream down his face. He was gasping heavily, trembling, but his mouth was covered so he could only make muffled sounds. Li Yan waited a moment, letting these two sharp sounds echo in their minds a few more times. Then he looked at the person on the left with a mole on his face and softly said, "If you dare to shout, I will break your neck. Understand?" The person nodded desperately. Li Yan signaled to the puppet. The puppet released his grip. The man was panting heavily, blood still dripping from his lips where he had bitten himself earlier. He opened his mouth about to shout, but the puppet's hand raised again. The man quickly shook his head, making a muffled sound, desperately signaling with his eyes. "I won't shout, I won't shout." Li Yan looked at him. After waiting a few moments and catching his breath, the man hoarsely said, It's Master Joe! Master Joe!" "Yes, he sent us here." Li Yan didn't speak, just looked at him. The man continued, "Master Joe said we should find out about the young master. He said the young master has goods, but the origin is unclear, and we should find out how many people he has and where the goods are stored. Is that all?" "That's all. Really, that's all?" the man said, glancing again at the two black puppets behind him, fear deep in his eyes. "Young master, we're just runners. We don't know anything." Li Yan was silent for a moment. "Is there someone behind Master Joe?" The man hesitated. The puppet's hand raised again. "Yes, yes, yes." The man hurriedly said, "It's the boss's order. Guan Langjun from the Jidea Trading House. Master Joe works for Guan Langjun." Li Yan silently repeated the name in his mind. Jidea Trading House? Guan Langjun. What kind of thing is that? "What does Guan Langjun want you to do?" Just to check on the young master's situation." The man's voice trembled. "He's been shipping goods in the city these days. Good quality. Unclear origin, and that they want to find out more about the young master." Li Yan stood up and took a few steps inside the room. The oil lamp flickered with his movement, casting long shadows of the two men. He returned to their front and squatted down. "Go back and tell Master Joe. Tell that Guan Langjun." His voice was quiet but clear. "If you want to do business and get goods, follow the rules. Bring the money, I sell the goods. Fair trade." He looked into the eyes of those two men. "If you use such low tricks again," he paused, "then everything will be destroyed." The two men nodded desperately, nodding like pounding garlic. Li Yan stood up, about to tell them to leave, but suddenly stopped. He looked back at this puppet. Full armor, black, covered tightly from head to tail. In this time, what crime is it to secretly hide armor? A death sentence. A death sentence that results in the entire family being executed. These two men saw it. If they go back and tell others, Li Yan stared at them. They shivered under his gaze. They didn't know what Li Yan was thinking, but that look made them feel cold from their bones. Kill or not, if he kills, it's over. But if these two are caught here, the shopkeeper will send people. Not just once or twice, it's hard to kill them all. Then the conflict will deepen, and living peacefully will be hard. It's inevitable there will be bloodshed, and just thinking about it tires him out. If he doesn't kill, they'll go back and tell others. Anyone with a bit of sense wouldn't offend him. The risk is about 50-50. Stupid. In a past life, dead people in the yard brought bad luck. Tonight they are lucky meeting this saint of a man. He only left 2 fingers behind, sparing their lives. Then he spoke like a kind-hearted guardian. "What did you see just now?" The 2 men were stunned, then quickly reacted. The one with a mole on his face hurriedly said, "We didn't see anything. We saw nothing." The young man also said it was dark, couldn't see clearly. Li Yan looked at them and suddenly smiled. "I don't care whether you saw clearly or not," he said. "Under the Emperor's rule, I dare to keep armor warriors. If the news leaks, I will destroy your shop and everything." He paused. "Understand?" The 2 men nodded desperately. "Go now." The puppet stepped forward, cutting the rope with a knife. The 2 men got up, bent over, and forced smiles on their faces. She said, "Thank you, sir, and your kindness is great." But she stepped back 1 step at a time until she reached the wall at the yard's edge. When they reached the wall, they didn't turn around. Instead, they looked at each other, flipped over the wall, and disappeared. Li Yan stood in the yard looking at the wall. Suddenly, he heard a noise behind him. He quickly turned around. The door to the east wing opened, and Shun Liuya stood at the door wearing a "What was that?" Li Yan paused. She wore a short, thin shirt that faintly showed her figure inside. Below, she had a pair of knee-length shorts revealing her slim calves. It was a sleeveless shirt and knee-length shorts, the kind worn to sleep at night. She stood there, moonlight shining on her, looking dark and thin like a small bamboo stick. She looked at Li Yan, then at the puppet behind him. Her eyes were wide, but she didn't shout or run. Li Yan looked at her and suddenly smiled. Seeing him smile, she froze for a moment, then looked down at herself, turned around, and ran back into the house, slamming the door shut. Li Yan stayed where he was, talking to himself. "So thin, what are you shy about?" He shook his head, then looked at the wall again. The two people had already disappeared. The night breeze rustled the jujube tree leaves. The moon peeked out from behind the clouds, lighting up the yard a bit more. He turned to go to the main house, but the door to the east wing opened again. This time Shun Liuya was dressed neatly, wearing a grayish-blue linen dress, her hair tied up again. Though hurried, she looked much tidier than before. She hurried over, stood in front of Li Yan, lowered her head, and spoke softly. "Sir, I just heard some noise. Are you all right?" Li Yan looked at her. The moonlight shone on her face, dark and thin, with slightly prominent cheekbones. Her eyes were bright, showing worry, fear, and something else. "I'm fine," he said. "Go back to sleep." Shun Liuya looked up quickly, glanced at him, then lowered her head again. "Don't worry," Li Yan said. Shun Liuya stood still. He repeated, "Go back to sleep." Finally, she nodded, turned, and walked toward the east wing. After a few steps, she looked back once more, then hurried into the house and closed the door. Li Yan stood in the courtyard watching the door close. He turned around and went into the main room. The armored puppet followed behind, standing quietly at the door with its face covered, not moving at all. Inside, Li Yan was lying on the bed, staring at the ceiling beam. The shop of Jia Shanghao. Lord Guo time flew by quickly, and it was now August 10th. Looking back over the past 20 days, Li Yan felt his days became more and more comfortable. He signed agreements for black pigs, yellow cattle, MSG millet, soy sauce, and more. One day he even signed for 10 tons of Westlake Longjing tea. This made Li Yan very happy, though most of the signed items were still mainly rice pigs and sheep. Lu Da and the others found that place within Zhomo County in the fields and marshes, water networks, shallow hills, reed marshes. Li Yan visited once and was very satisfied. In the city, Qin Si became his right hand, running errands, delivering messages, and gathering information quickly and efficiently. Shun Liuya tidied up the yard neatly, and he had gained some weight since arriving, with a fuller face, no longer so thin and dark. There had been no further news from shopkeeper Zhao. After that night, the people from Tongyuanxing seemed to disappear, never coming back. Li Yan was not in a hurry. According to Qin Si, the grain prices had been rising for more than 10 days. One morning, just after waking up and sitting under the jujube tree drinking porridge, there was a knock at the yard gate. Shun Liuya went to open the door, and in came Zhao Lin. He was the owner of Tongji Fang. Out of boredom, Li Yan had once visited him with a bag of pepper. And since then, the fat shopkeeper had become more friendly toward Li Yan. Master Li, Zhao Lin bowed with a smile. "Sorry to bother you." Li Yan put down his bowl, stood up to return the greeting. "Shopkeeper Zhou has arrived. Please come in and sit." Shun Liuya, pour some tea. Zhou Lin waved his hand. "No need for tea. I just have something to say, and then I'll leave." He took a piece of paper from his pocket and handed it to Li Yan. "Master Li, take a look at this." Li Yan took it and looked down. The paper had a few lines of writing roughly saying that the court had issued a new order. Salt and iron officials would be state-run, and household registration and conscription would be enforced. His family was assessed as a lower-class household, and they were required to pay a house tax and salt money of 200 won to be paid within 3 days at the shop, or penalties would be added. House tax and salt money. Li Yan looked up. Zhou Lin sighed and lowered his voice. "Master Li, you just arrived in Bianlian, so you probably don't know about this. The new order from the court says they will reintroduce the salt tax. The tax is 7 coins per jin for excess salt, and 10 coins per jin for residence tax. Merchants selling salt must pay 2 taxes, causing the salt price to rise quickly. But that's not all. They also collect money based on household registration. 1 household account for the main family and 200 for smaller households, divided into 5 levels for taxation. Sir, your courtyard is newly rented and you don't have many belongings. The estate has assigned a secondary household account to take care of this. Hearing this, Li Yan's mind raced quickly. 1 household account for the main family, 200 for smaller households, 5 levels of taxation. Isn't this just a head tax? Under the guise of the salt tax, they collect money based on household registration regardless of whether people buy salt or not. With the monopoly on salt and iron adding taxes on excess salt and residents, plus another tax based on household registration, the common people suffer greatly. Damn that Shi Chongwei. What happens after paying this money? He asked. Zhou Lin smiled bitterly. After paying, you still have to buy salt, and you still need to buy salt. Official salt is expensive. Private salt is illegal. What can the common people do? Li Yan nodded but didn't ask further. He took out 200 coins from his pocket and handed them to Zhou Lin. Please, Brother Zhou, go and pay this for me. Zhou Lin took the money, nodded, and put it in his pocket. He also warned, Sir, wait a while to get the receipt. They will check later. Li Yan agreed. Zhou Lin bowed and turned to leave. He sat back under the jujube tree, picked up a bowl of porridge, and took a sip. Shi Chongwei, he cursed silently in his heart. In his previous life, when he watched the peace years, he thought this man had some backbone, daring to challenge the Khitan. Now, living in this era, he realizes that backbone is something the common people buy with their money. Before he finished his porridge, the courtyard gate sounded again. Shun Liuya ran to open the door. The person who entered made Li Yan pause. Manager Zhou, he was dressed in a slightly new green robe, carrying 2 oil paper packages with a smile on his face. As soon as he entered, he bowed to Li Yan. Li Sir, long time no see. How have you been? Li Yan stood up, looked at him, and also smiled. Manager Zhou has come a rare guest. He nodded to Shun Liuya. Pour some tea. The two sat under the jujube tree. Manager Zhou placed the oil paper packages on the table and pushed them over. A small gift, just a token of respect. This is a snack from the south. Sir, please try it. Li Yan looked at the paper-wrapped package but made no move. Master Zhou, what brings you here today? Master Zhou's smile faded and he spoke seriously. Sir Li, I am here to apologize. He stood up and bowed deeply to Li Yan. The matter from half the month ago was my mistake. Following the master's orders, I did not dare disobey. I've been thinking about it more and more, and I realize I shouldn't have let anyone probe into your affairs, sir. Li Yan looked at him silently. Master Zhao maintained his bowing posture, bending forward and waiting. After a few moments, Li Yan finally spoke. Sit down, Master Zhao. Master Zhao straightened up and sat back on the stool, looking a bit nervous. Li Yan picked up his teacup, took a sip, and said slowly, That night's matter is in the past. Master Zhao hurriedly nodded. Yes, your straightforwardness, sir. I won't beat around the bush anymore. He leaned forward slightly and lowered his voice. The words you mentioned that night, after hearing them, the master thought for a few days and decided that you are someone capable of doing long-term business. From now on, all the goods from you will be accepted by Tongyuan Trading. The prices are negotiable, and we will not treat you unfairly. Li Yan looked at him and smiled. Master Guo has understood now. Master Zhao nodded and sighed. Jieda Trading has been operating honestly in Bianliang for over 10 years. The incident that night was a moment of confusion on the master's part, trying to learn more about you. Later, when he found out you have... He paused, choosing his words carefully. Such skills, the master understood that you are not an ordinary person. Moreover, you are younger than the master, and recently the master has gone south. In the end, he said he wanted to meet you when he entered the capital. Li Yan listened silently. Master Zhao continued. Rest assured, sir, that night's matter was instructed by the master. They were told to keep quiet, not to leak a word. That thing of yours? He pointed behind Li Yan and lowered his voice. Don't worry, no one knows. Li Yan felt relieved. Sure enough that Master Guo is a clever man. Someone who can raise soldiers under the emperor's nose would rather do business than make enemies. Master Zhao, please enjoy your tea. Li Yan picked up his cup. Master Zhao quickly picked up the bowl, took a sip, and his nervousness eased, replaced by a smile. The two exchanged a few words about recent city news grain prices and the new salt tax policy. Master Zhao subtly asked about how much goods Li Yan still had, and Li Yan just smiled and said he had enough to sell for a while. After 3 rounds of tea, Li Yan spoke. Since Master Zhao has come take some goods back today, 10 bags of rice and 1 bag of pepper. Would you like to buy? Master Zhao's eyes brightened. Pepper, sir, you have pepper? Li Yan nodded. Master Zhao's spirits lifted immediately. Yes, of course I'll buy. How much do you have? Just 1 bag to try today. Name your price. Master Zhao thought for a moment, holding up 5 fingers. Pepper is rare coming from the south, used a lot in the palace. Your goods are good quality. I'll give 500 coins per jin. How does that sound? Li Yan quickly did the math in his head. 1 bag weighs 50 kilograms, which is about 80 jin now. At 500 coins per jin, 80 jin equals 4,000 coins. He nodded. Agreed. Send someone to pick it up tonight. 10 bags of rice and 1 bag of pepper. Master Zhao beamed with happiness, thanked him repeatedly, drank another bowl of tea, then took his leave. Li Yan saw him off at the door, watching him walk away. Back in the yard, he sat under the jujube tree, looking at the 2 packages of snacks. Master Zhao's visit today was both a test and a negotiation. That was Sir is clever. He didn't report the armor incident, showing he's not simple. He also remembered what Fang Lin just said about the salt tax. Tax on household registration is 1 rate. For outsiders, it's 200. 7 coins for customs, 10 coins for residence tax. Sure, Chongwei is really trying to squeeze every penny. Soon, once the position under the hanging wall is secured, it's likely that grain taxes, cloth taxes, and various other levies will come. He stood up, walked to the firewood shed, lightly tapped, and instantly 10 bags of rice and 1 bag of pepper appeared. Shun Liuya came out of the kitchen quietly and asked, Sir, the porridge has cooled. Should I heat another bowl? Lin waved his hand. No need. He stood under the jujube tree looking at the sky. The August sun was still hot. Who was young and charming on the roadside? Lin finished his lunch, packed a small bag of sugar, and headed to the Tongji workshop. The afternoon sun was quite harsh, making the ground look white. He walked along the alley for a while and saw the familiar courtyard in the distance. There was a wooden pole at the gate with an old flag hanging on it, lazily swaying in the hot wind. Before entering, he looked back. At the alley entrance, there was a water vendor's stall, where an old man in tattered clothes was dozing. Further ahead, 2 peddlers carried their loads and called out as they walked. Nothing unusual. He pushed the door open. Zhou Lin was inside, flipping through a ledger by the window light. When he heard footsteps, he looked up and smiled. Master Li has arrived. Please sit. Lin went over and placed the small bag of sugar on the table. You're still so polite, Master. Is this a receipt? He took out a piece of paper from his pocket. Lin took it, looked at it, and nodded. They exchanged a few words and then stood up to leave. Zhou Lin saw him to the door, smiling. Master Li, take care on your way. If you need anything in the future, just come find me. Lin cupped his hands, left the workshop. He didn't go back the way he came, but turned a corner toward the Xiangwu Temple area. Qingming Pavilion was still the same. At the entrance, a cloth awning was hanging. The door was half open and the sound of a pipa playing lively and cheerful came from inside. Li Yan pushed the door open. Behind the counter, shopkeeper Wu Da was playing with an abacus. When he saw Li Yan, his face immediately lit up with a smile. Oh, Master Li is here. Haven't seen you in a few days. Please come in. Li Yan nodded and stepped inside. Wu Da followed eagerly, greeting him warmly. Would you like your usual spot? The one by the window? Yes. Li Yan sat down on the bench by the window. Wu Da was about to go pour tea, but Li Yan stopped him. Not today, I won't drink your tea. Wu Da was surprised. Master, what do you mean? Li Yan took a small cloth bag from his pocket, untied it, revealing greenish tea leaves, flat and shiny with a fresh green color. I brought my own tea. Can I borrow your teacup and hot water? Wu Da leaned over to look, sniffed, and smiled. What kind of tea is this? It smells good. Long Jing from West Lake, Li Yan said from the south. Wu Da nodded and turned to the back. Soon he brought a black ceramic teacup and a pot of boiling water. He placed the items on the table and looked at Li Yan. Li Yan pinched some tea leaves, put them into the cup, and poured hot water from the pot. The tea leaves swirled in the water, slowly unfurling. A fresh, light aroma spread out, gentle and not overpowering. Wu Da watched quietly and smiled. Your brewing method is quite new. In Bien Li Yan, we usually boil the tea, crush it into powder, make a paste, and then add hot water. So you just pour hot water directly. Li Yan picked up the teacup, blew on it, and took a sip. We drink it like this in the South, he said. Wu Da looked at the tea with curiosity. Li Yan smiled and handed him a cloth bag. Try some wu shui guai. Wu Da took it, pinched some tea leaves, and poured hot water over them. He lifted the cup. Smelled it first, then took a sip. He tasted it, then took another sip. It's light, he said, lighter than our boiling method. But he took another sip. It has a good aroma, fresh and unique. Li Yan smiled but said nothing. Wu Da took 2 more sips, mumbled with his mouth, then put down the cup and gave Li Yan a thumbs up. Your tea is good. From now on, come here and we'll keep the hot water coming. Li Yan nodded and pointed behind him. Same as always, the snacks are coming. Call one of the girls. Wu Dao agreed and turned to arrange things. Soon a girl in a green dress came out from the back holding a pipa. When she saw Li Yan, she smiled. Li Langjun is here. She sat on a corner stool, adjusted her strings, and asked, What would you like to hear today? Li Yan leaned by the window, sipping his tea and thinking. Pick your best song. The girl nodded, plucked her pipa, and started to sing. It was a tune from Wang Jiangnan, a popular song about longing and parting. Her voice was soft and a little lazy, especially soothing in this quiet afternoon tea house. Li Yan listened, occasionally taking a sip of tea or nibbling on a fruit. Sunlight streamed in through the window, shining on the table, the teacup, and the girl's skirt. The aroma of tea and the sound of the pipa blended together, making time slow down. When she finished singing, the girl looked up at him. Young master, do you still want to listen? Li Yan nodded. She began to sing again. The sun was gradually setting in the west. Li Yan left Qingming Pavilion, walking through the alley, humming the little tune the girl just sang. Spring outing, apricot blossoms blowing all around. Who in the village is young and charming? The tune was lively. As he hummed, he started to smile. When he returned to the courtyard, the evening glow was already lighting up the sky. He pushed open the door, and a fragrant smell greeted him. Under the jujube tree, there was a low table with a large clay basin on it filled with bright yellow egg pancakes, cut into pieces and still steaming. Next to it was a big bowl of mutton soup, milky white in color, with a few sprigs of cilantro floating on top. Shun Liuya peeked out from the kitchen, saw him, and smiled. Young master is back. The food is ready. Eat while it's hot. Li Yan sat under the jujube tree, picked up chopsticks, and took a piece of the egg pancake. The pancake was soft with a rich egg aroma. He took a bite and his mouth was filled with flavor. He took another sip of the mutton soup. It was hot, not greasy, and well-seasoned. Shun Liuya carried over a bowl, and chopsticks sat across from him. She didn't rush to eat, but watched Li Yan eat with a smile on her face. Li Yan looked up at her. This girl had changed. More than half a month ago, when she first arrived, she was dark and thin, looking down, speaking softly like a mosquito, avoiding eye contact. Now her face had some flesh, no longer so dark, her eyes bright with 2 shallow dimples when she smiled. Her clothes had also changed. Though still thin, she looked much more pleasing. What are you looking at? Li Yan asked. Shun Liuya blushed slightly, lowered her head, but her lips still curved into a smile. I see you eating happily, she whispered. It makes me happy. Li Yan smiled and took another piece of pancake. As they ate, Shun Liuya talked more than usual. She talked while eating about her trip to buy supplies today and how she saw a silk merchant in the street with good quality and fair prices. She mentioned that someone in the neighboring alley was getting married and the celebration was lively all morning. She also said that the old woman at the alley entrance had been unwell recently and she helped buy some medicine. Li Yan listened, occasionally responding. After finishing the meal, Xun Liuya cleared the dishes and took them to the kitchen. Soon after, she came out again, holding a tray with a teacup on it, steam rising from it. She placed the teacup beside Li Yan. "Sir, please have some tea." Li Yan picked up his cup and took a sip. The tea was hot brewed, just right, neither too strong nor too weak. Xun Liuya walked behind him, resting her hands on his shoulders, gently squeezing. Her grip was light and soft, pressing in a little at a time, making him feel comfortable. Li Yan leaned back in his chair, closed his eyes, and let her do as she pleased. "Sir," Xun Liuya said while massaging, "there's something I want to tell you. A few days ago, a girl from our alley asked me to ask you something." Li Yan opened his eyes. "What is it?" Xun Liuya smiled, not stopping her gentle squeezing. "It's about that singer Li Pinger. You know her." Li Yan thought for a moment. He did know all the girls from Qingming Pavilion. Li Pinger was about 20, with a round face like an egg, a sweet smile, and a lovely voice. "What did she ask?" "She asked if you still need a girl to serve you," Xun Liuya said with a smile. "She wants to come and serve you." Li Yan was surprised. "Isn't she singing nicely at the tea house?" Xun Liuya shook her head. "That place is crowded and noisy with some shady people around. Li Pinger has wanted to leave for a while, but she had nowhere to go. She saw that you treat people well, so she asked me to ask you." Li Yan took a sip of tea. "How is she?" Xun Liuya thought for a moment and said seriously, "Li Pinger is kind and good-hearted, and she's good at sewing and braiding hair. She sings well, is skilled with needlework, and can also do hairstyling. If you take her in, I would have a companion too." Li Yan nodded. "All right, tell her to come tomorrow. I'll see her then." Xun Liuya smiled, her grip lightening even more. "Okay, I'll tell her tomorrow." She continued massaging his shoulders, saying, "Sir, you don't know. Every day I go out shopping, I meet old neighbors. They all envy me and my brother so much. They say we have a good master, plenty to eat and wear, and monthly money. It's like falling into a lucky nest." Li Yan smiled, but said nothing. People in ancient times were really easy to satisfy. Just a meal, a piece of clothing, and some money, like falling into a lucky nest. He remembered his past life, working long hours, earning only a few thousand yuan, renting a tiny room, and constantly struggling with internal conflicts. He was young, but already had various health issues. If he could send them to this era and let them experience a few days of hunger in a refugee camp, they might learn to appreciate life more. "Young master," Xun Liuya asked again, "I've learned a few characters from what you taught me. Want to test me?" Li Yan turned to look at her. "Oh, how many do you know?" Xun Liuya counted on her fingers. 10. "One friend, self-distant square, come, not also say question." Li Yan paused, then smiled. "That's impressive." Xun Liuya nodded, feeling a bit shy. Li Yan looked at her. She was smiling, her eyes bright with pride, hope, and a little bit of pride. "Tomorrow I'll teach you 10 more." Xun Liuya happily agreed, her energy lifting a little. Suddenly there was a knock on the courtyard door. Knock, 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 3 gentle knocks. Xun Liuya ran to open the door. Standing outside was Manager Zhou with 2 assistants pushing a cart behind him. "Young Master Li," Manager Zhou said with a smile and a bow. "Here to deliver goods?" Li Yan stood up and went to greet him. "Manager Zhou has arrived. Please come inside." Manager Zhou entered the yard and the assistants pushed the cart in. Li Yan went to the firewood shed door and opened it. 10 bags of rice, 1 bag of pepper. "Help yourselves." The assistants went inside, each carrying a bag out. Li Yan watched them for a moment, then suddenly stepped forward, easily lifting a bag of rice with one hand and walking over to the cart to place it down. Manager Zhou's eyes widened in amazement. Li Yan lifted it as if it were a chicken. "Young Master Li," Manager Zhou blurted out, "Your strength." Li Yan clapped his hands and smiled. "I've been practicing since I was young." Manager Zhou swallowed hard. His last little schemes completely gone. Seeing Li Yan's strength, he believed even more. This person not only had that talent, but was also very tough himself. Manager Zhou Li Yan said as he approached, "What's the price of rice today?" Manager Zhou snapped out of his thoughts and quickly replied, "It's gone up. The grain prices have increased these days. Rice is now 310 coins per due." He paused and then said, "Pepper costs 5 liang per jin, 80 jin total, 400 liang." He took out a small box of silver from the cart and counted it carefully. "Sir, please check." Li Yan took it, weighed it, and set it aside. Shopkeeper Zhao then handed over a piece of paper. Shopkeeper Zhao bowed and, with the help of an assistant, pushed the cart out the door. After walking a few steps, he looked back at the yard and then disappeared into the night. Qin Liulia closed the door and returned to the jujube tree. "Sir, the water is ready. Would you like me to help you bathe?" Li Yan nodded and headed to the west wing. Inside the west room, a wooden basin was prepared, filled with warm water steaming gently. Next to it, a clean cloth and a small box of bath beans were placed on a small stool. Li Yan took off his clothes, sat in the basin, and soaked. Chun Liulia squatted by the basin, holding the cloth, and gently washed his back. The room was quiet with only the sound of water. Moonlight from outside shone through the window, casting a faint glow on the ground. After washing, Li Yan put on clean clothes and lay down in the main room. Chun Liulia finished tidying up quietly, closed the door, and returned to the east room. In the yard, the jujube tree rustled softly in the night breeze. At dawn, Li Yan was awakened by the gentle sounds in the yard. It wasn't loud noise, but soft, careful movements. A water bucket was gently placed on the well's edge, a broom swept the ground with care, and footsteps moved quietly, back and forth, all very light. He turned over and continued sleeping. When he woke again, sunlight filtered through the paper windows, casting a faint light inside. Li Yan sat up, dressed, and pushed open the door. In the yard, the jujube tree looked bright green in the morning light, and the stones by the well were wet from the water. A basin of warm water sat on a low table with a clean cloth beside it. In the kitchen, steam rose from the porridge, filling the air with its aroma. Chun Liulia peeked out from the kitchen and saw him smiling. "Sir, you're awake. The face-washing water is ready, and the porridge will be ready soon." Li Yan nodded and went to the well, using the basin of warm water to wash his face. The water was just right, neither hot nor cold. After washing, Chun Liulia brought over a bowl of porridge, 2 pancakes, and a plate of pickled vegetables, placing them under the jujube tree. "Please eat first, sir. I will go to fetch Sister Pinger, and I'll be back soon." Li Yan sat down and picked up his chopsticks. Chun Liulia took off her apron, tidied her clothes, and quickly left the room. The porridge was made from millet thick enough to stand the chopsticks, with a strong rice aroma. The pancake was made from mixed grains, cooked until both sides were golden brown, crispy outside and soft inside with each bite. The pickled vegetables were shredded radish strips, seasoned with salt and pepper, salty, fragrant, crunchy, and tender. Li Yan ate slowly. After finishing one bowl, he added half a bowl more. Just then, the courtyard gate was pushed open. Shun Sai led a worker inside, carrying a reclining chair. The chair was made of bamboo, with an adjustable backrest and 2 curved wooden supports underneath, allowing it to sway when someone lies on it. The bamboo slats were woven tightly and polished smooth, shining faintly yellow in the sunlight. Li Yan's eyes brightened. He stood up and walked over. "Finally finished." He asked Qin Shi and the worker to place the chair under the jujube tree. He couldn't wait and sat down quickly, leaning back. The backrest slowly tilted and the bamboo made a soft squeak sound. He lay flat, shook a little, and the chair gently swayed. It felt comfortable. Qin Shi smiled and asked, "Sir, are you satisfied?" Li Yan nodded. "Yes." "How much is the remaining payment?" 5 coins of silver." Li Yan signaled to Qin Shi, who took a small piece of broken silver from his pocket, about a little more than 5 coins, and handed it to the worker. The worker took it, weighed it, and smiled, saying auspicious words, wishing you good fortune, health, and everything going smoothly. Li Yan waved his hand and the worker stepped back. Qin Shi was still standing nearby. Li Yan lay on the chair, swinging gently, and asked him, "Is the money enough?" Qin Shi quickly nodded. Yes. A couple of days ago you gave 2 taels, so there's quite a bit left. I've kept track of everything and will show you later." Li Yan waved his hand. "No need to check. You do your work. I trust you." Then he remembered something and said, "By the way, go to the blacksmith shop and get me a pot." Qin Shi was a bit surprised. "A pot? What kind of pot do you want, sir? Don't we have pots at home?" Li Yan sat up, gesturing as he explained. Not that kind. I want one shallow, wide mouth with a raised chimney in the middle. The bottom of the pot should be able to burn charcoal, and inside it can cook soup. The soup can be used for hot pot and for cooking meat and vegetables. Qinshi was very confused. He frowned and thought for a long time before hesitantly asking, "Sir, are you talking about that kind of pot? The one with a chimney in the middle?" "I think I've seen something like that. Some officials' families use it. What's it called? A hot pot?" Li Yan nodded. "That's close enough. Go to the blacksmith shop and ask them to make one according to my instructions. It should be a bit bigger enough for 4 or 5 people to sit around and eat." Qinshi agreed and asked, "Does Sir have any other instructions?" Li Yan thought for a moment. "That's all. Go now." Qinshi cupped his hands and turned to leave. Li Yan lay back in his chair, swinging gently, watching the branches and leaves of the jujube tree above. Sunlight filtered through the leaves, flickering on his face. It felt very comfortable. He closed his eyes, enjoying this rare moment of leisure. After a while, the courtyard gate was pushed open. Li Yan opened his eyes. Xun Liuya entered, followed by a person, Li Pinger. Today, she wasn't wearing the blue dress she wore when singing at the tea house. Instead, she had on a light blue cloth dress, washed clean, with her hair neatly tied up and secured with a wooden hairpin. Her face was free of makeup, clean and fresh, more pleasing to look at than when she was at the tea house. She followed behind Xun Liuya, head bowed, clutching her dress corners with both hands. When she reached the jujube tree, she stopped, not daring to lift her head. Li Yan sat up from the lounge chair and looked at her. "Miss Pinger?" Li Pinger raised her head quickly, glanced at him, then lowered it again. Her face turned red all the way to her ears. She opened her mouth, her voice soft. "Sir." "Sir?" Xun Liuya stood nearby, watching Li Pinger and Li Yan, smiling with her lips pressed together. Li Yan also smiled. "Sit down," he said, pointing to the bench beside him. Li Pinger didn't move. Xun Liuya nudged her gently, and she slowly walked over. Sat on the bench, only half sitting, her body tense. Li Yan looked at her and said, "Miss Pinger, I've been listening to your songs all this time, but I haven't asked your name. Since you're here today, I need to ask some things clearly." Li Pinger lowered her head and nodded. "Has Xixi told you about the monthly payment?" Li Pinger nodded, her voice still soft. "Yes, 2 taels of silver a month, including food and lodging. Does your family agree?" Li Pinger looked up, glanced at him, then lowered her head again. "I have no mother. My father is a soldier in the Holy Guard Army working at the camp, so he doesn't come home often. He doesn't care about me." Li Yan nodded. He knew the Holy Guard Army was a special force stationed in the west of the city. He asked again, "You were singing happily at the tea house. Why did you come here?" Li Pinger hesitated for a moment before speaking. "My lord often comes to listen to me sing. He is a good person." She paused, her voice softer. "The place at the tea house isn't easy to stay." Li Yan looked at her silently. "Feeling brave." Li Pinger continued, "Manager Wu is kind and takes care of us, but he takes 40% of the money from singing, and we only get the rest. A song costs 10 coins, but we only get 6, sometimes none. No orders all day, so we sit there for nothing. When it's good, people order many songs, and we can earn dozens of coins, but sometimes," she paused, her face turning redder, "there are rough men who order songs and curse a lot. Manager Wu can't control them. They are customers." Li Yan listened, understanding her situation. "Your father doesn't care for you." Li Pinger shook her head. "He comes home only a few times a year. When he does, he drinks and then falls asleep. He doesn't care about me." Li Yan was silent for a moment. He looked at the girl, who was about 20, with an oval face, neat eyebrows and eyes, fair skin, much fairer than Xun Liuya. She wore a simple cloth dress, clean but old, with frayed collar and cuffs. "All right," he said, "you can stay." Li Pinger's eyes lit up immediately. "Thank you, sir." Li Yan nodded at her, then looked at Xun Liuya. "Li Oya take her and tidy up the empty room in the west wing. From now on, she will live next door to you." Xun Liuya smiled and agreed. "Yes." Li Yan stood up, patting himself. "I'm going out of town today and might not come back. Take care of the yard and cook your own meals." Xun Liuya was surprised. "Sir, you're leaving town. Should we ask my brother to come with you?" Li Yan waved his hand. No need, I'll go alone. He nodded to the two young women and left the house. The gate closed behind him. Shun Liuya and Li Pinger stood under the jujube tree watching the door. After a while, Li Pinger let out a gentle sigh and relaxed a little. She looked around then at the jujube tree, the well, and the main and side rooms. Li Weya, she whispered, is this where you live? Shun Liuya nodded and sat down with her under the jujube tree. From now on, this will also be your home, she said with a smile. Li Pinger looked at her and also smiled, though her smile was a bit shy. Li Weya. She hesitated, speaking even softer. How far have you gone in serving the young master? Shun Liuya was surprised for a moment, then understood. Her face turned slightly red and she pinched her gently. What are you thinking about? Li Pinger rubbed her pinch and asked again, is it really nothing? Shun Liuya shook her head seriously. No, the young master is a gentleman. She paused and added, when bathing, I did want to serve him. At first he didn't allow it, but I was bold and asked. He said no, but I insisted that it was my duty, and he let me in. But I only helped with washing his back and handing him clothes, nothing more. Li Pinger blinked, listening. Really, Shun Liuya nodded. When the young master looked at me, it wasn't that kind of gaze. Li Pinger was silent for a moment, then suddenly lowered her head, voice even softer. Liuya, I am no longer a virgin. Shun Liuya was surprised. Li Pinger didn't lift her head but continued. A few years ago, a regular visitor who listened to music often came. He seemed refined and was generous with his money. Later. There was a time I was young and naive, thought he. And then, she couldn't go on. Shun Liuya looked at her and reached out to hold her hand. Will the young master dislike me? Li Pinger looked up, her eyes a little red. If he finds out, will he send me away? Shun Liuya squeezed her hand tightly. Don't think like that, she said. The young master isn't that kind of person. Young master took me in, gave me food and clothes, and paid me monthly, never looking at me with that kind of gaze. Later I begged to serve him by helping him bathe. He did whatever he wanted, but he never touched me. She looked into Li Pinger's eyes and said seriously, young master is a good person. He won't dislike you. Li Pinger looked at her. Her eyes still red, but her fear was less. Besides, Shun Liuya suddenly smiled. Sister Pinger, you have a good figure, a fair face, and sing very well. You're much better than me. If the young master dislikes you, then I should dislike myself even more. Li Pinger was amused by her and gently hit her. You sure know how to talk. The two girls sat under the jujube tree chatting. Sunlight filtered through the branches, flickering on them. The yard was quiet, with only the occasional breeze rustling the jujube leaves. Li Yan left the yard and headed west. He passed through Tongji Alley, walked along a familiar street, and from afar he saw the city gate, Wancheng Gate. The gate was open, and a lazy guard leaned against the wall with his gun stuck in the ground, dozing with half-closed eyes. He blended into the crowd and left the city. As he stepped outside the gate, the familiar stench hit him again, but it was even stronger than last month. Li Yan frowned and looked ahead. Outside the city, the open space was filled with makeshift shelters, more numerous than 20 days ago. What was once a barely tolerable open area was now densely packed with broken mats and tattered cloth shelters stretching as far as he could see. People moved among the shelters, hunched over, walking very slowly. Some lay on the roadside, motionless, not knowing if they were asleep or dead. Flies buzzed in swarms. He quickened his pace and pushed through the crowd. After a few steps, he heard someone crying by the roadside, a woman holding a child. The child was limp, head tilted back, face covered with flies. The woman didn't rush, just held the child and sobbed hoarsely like a broken windbag. Li Yan didn't stop and walked faster. He left the refugee camp and continued for a while, the surroundings gradually becoming emptier. The wild field was overgrown with tall grass about as high as a person. When the wind blew, it rustled loudly. There was no one around, no one in sight. He stopped and sent his consciousness into the system. He summoned the puppet horse alone. A black war horse appeared out of nowhere, fully armored with a complete saddle. Li Yan mounted the horse, squeezed his legs, and the horse started to run. The hooves hit the dirt road, kicking up dust behind them. They headed west towards Zhongmu County. After running for a while, the view suddenly opened up. In front of them was a large marsh water, blending with the sky stretching to the horizon. Reeds grew taller than a person, dense and lush. When the wind blew, they rippled like green waves. Waterfowl called among the reeds, chirping and quacking near and far. This was a marshland. Leon pulled the horse to a stop and looked around, while observing a person emerged from the reeds. The person wore a short brown coat, rolled up his pants, and held a bamboo pole. Seeing Li Yan, he paused briefly, then smiled and quickly approached. "Young master," it was Zhao San. Li Yan dismounted, smiling as he walked over. "Old Zhao San, you've hidden well." Zhao San grinned, showing yellow teeth. "Young master, you say I hide well. If I didn't, how could I let you find me?" He glanced behind Li Yan, his gaze falling on the black horse, and paused. The horse was black, and so was its armor, fully covering from head to tail, even with a metal mesh over the eyes. "Young master, this horse." Li Yan patted the horse's neck but didn't reply. Seeing his expression, Li Yan smiled. "Don't stand there, let's go." He turned and walked to the water's edge, pulling out a small boat from the reeds. Narrow, only fit for 2 or 3 people, with dry grass at the bottom. "Young master, get in. I'll row." Li Yan jumped into the boat and sat on the dry grass. Zhao San pushed off with the bamboo pole, and the boat drifted away from the shore into the reeds. The armored war horse and the others disappeared instantly. The reeds grew taller, blocking the sky. The boat moved through the waterway, flanked by dense reeds. Only the sound of the bamboo pole dipping into the water and the occasional startled waterfowl taking flight could be heard. After winding around for a while, suddenly the view brightened. The boat reached the shore. Li Yan jumped out and looked around, observing the surroundings. This was a good place. The 3 sides are gentle slopes covered with short trees and wild grass. The slopes are not high but roll continuously, enclosing this area. One side is water, the marshy reeds we just crossed. At the foot of the slope near the water, there are several makeshift huts, with smoke rising from their roofs. A few women are washing clothes by the water, pounding them with sticks, and hanging a few linen garments nearby. Some children are running around barefoot, chasing each other. When they see Zhao San leading Li Yan over, the women are momentarily stunned, then all kneel down, bowing their heads to the ground. "Sir!" The children also kneel, staying still and afraid to move. Li Yan quickly walks over and reaches out to help them up. "Get up, all of you." The women stand up, bowing their heads, and step back to the side. The children are still kneeling, but adults pull them up and they hide behind. Li Yan looks at them. Each one is pale and thin, wearing tattered clothes, but their eyes are not empty, like the refugees outside the city waiting for death. Their eyes have a spark of life. Though timid, they still seem human. "Where are Lu Da and the others?" he asks. Zhao San points toward the gentle slope. "Sir, follow me." They walk around the huts and go up the slope. After a few steps, they hear the clinking of tools and shouts of workers. On the slope, more than 20 men are busy working. Some are digging soil, their pickaxes breaking into the ground, dirt flying everywhere. Others are carrying logs, thick tree trunks, tied with ropes. A few men carrying them while shouting commands, moving step by step. Some are pounding stakes into the ground, the hammers hitting with loud bangs. At the bottom of the slope, several large pits have been dug. Wooden frames are set inside, covered with dry grass and reed mats, looking like the beginnings of a primitive underground cellar. Lu Da is standing near one of the pits, shouting something into it. When he sees Zhao San leading Li Yan over, he quickly runs over, smiling brightly. "Sir is here." The workers also notice and stop what they're doing, kneeling on the ground. "Sir," Li Yan waves his hand. "Get up, everyone. Do what you need to do." The men stand up and go back to work, but they seem more energetic than before, shouting louder and working faster. Lu led Li Yan uphill, walking and talking at the same time. "Sir, this place is really good." 3 sides are blocked by slopes and 1 side is separated by water. Outsiders can't get in. There are wild animals on the slope, fish in the water, so we won't go hungry. He pointed at the pits at the foot of the slope. "That's the tide. The ground is wet, and it's hard to dig a good cellar. If we dig too deep, water will come in." The young ones came up with a plan. "Dig shallow on the slope, support it with wood, and cover it thickly on top so we can store food." Li Yan nodded and followed him to a cellar. At the door stood a person, Sun Shi. He had a knife at his waist. When he saw Li Yan, he quickly bowed. "Sir." Li Yan nodded, lifted the grass curtain at the entrance and bent down to go inside. The inside was dark, but he could see clearly. The floor was covered with dry grass, and on top were sacks stacked one after another. He counted about 4 or 5 bags of rice, 1 bag of salt, and 1 bag of sugar. That was all. He reached into his system and took out 10 more bags of flour. Suddenly, with a loud bang, 10 bags of flour appeared out of nowhere and piled on the ground. Lu Da and Sun Shi were stunned. Li Yan clapped his hands and took out 2 tokens from his pocket. They were black, about the size of a palm, engraved with patterns, and heavy. He handed the tokens to Lu Da and Sun Shi. "Hold these." They took the tokens, cupped them in their hands, looking confused. Lu Da looked at the tokens and then at Li Yan. "Sir, what are these?" Li Yan looked at them seriously and said, "You've guessed some things over the days we've been together. Today, I will tell you the truth." He paused. "I am a descendant of the Mohist school." Lu blinked. Sun Shi blinked too. "A Mohist?" Lu mumbled. "What is that?" Li Yan found it amusing but kept a serious face. "The Mohists were an ancient system like scholars today. Back then, they called it Confucianism. The books say the Mohist mechanisms, wood and stone walk. Those puppets, they are Mohist skills." He took the token from Lu Da's hand and held it up for them to see. "This token is a key to their secret techniques." Lu Da opened his mouth but couldn't speak. Sun Shi was also stunned, trembling slightly as he held the token. Li Yan returned the token to Lu Da's hand and nodded at them. "Try it." Lu Da looked at the token, then at Li Yan, and swallowed hard. He held the token in his hand, unsure of what to do. Li Yan said, "Just think about summoning it." Lu Da closed his eyes, frowned as if concentrating hard. Suddenly a gust of wind appeared out of nowhere. A black horse stepped out from the empty space, and on its back sat a black armored knight, fully covered from head to toe with only a pair of eyes visible. Those eyes flashed briefly in the sunlight, then looked at Lu Da. Startled, Lu Da took a step back and sat down heavily on the ground. This. The men around him knelt down quickly, their heads bowed to the ground, trembling all over. A miracle, a heavenly soldier. Oh, heavens. Some people lay on the ground, afraid to look up. Others muttered to themselves. Some trembled with fear. Sun Shi also knelt down, nearly dropping the token from his hand. He was prostrate on the ground, trembling as he said, "Young master, is he a heavenly being sent from above?" Li Yan looked at them, amused and a bit helpless. He walked over, first helping Lu Da to his feet, then helping Sun Shi. "Get up, everyone!" He raised his voice and shouted to the kneeling men, "Stand up, it's not a god, it's just a mechanical device. It's written in the books Mo's mechanical arts. If you can read and write, you'll know." The men still hesitated, not daring to move. Li Yan sighed, then went over and helped each of them up one by one. "Come on, get up. We'll be working together in the future, so no need to kneel." The men, once standing still, kept their bodies stiff, afraid to look directly at Li Yan or at the black armored puppet. Lu Da stood there, his legs still trembling. He looked at the puppet and then at the token in his hand, muttering, "Young master, is this really mechanical art?" Li Yan nodded. "Yes, from Mo's school. From Mo's. It's an old skill passed down from ancient times, recorded in the books. Once you learn to read and write, you can look it up yourself." Sun Shi leaned in and whispered, "Young master, where is that book? I want to see it too." Li Yan was amused by him. "I'll find it for you later," he said, looking at Sun Shi. "Keep the token safe. From now on, you and Lu Da will take turns guarding this place. If something happens, this thing could save lives." Sun Shi held the token carefully, as if it were a rare treasure, and nodded firmly. Li Yan looked around at the men nearby. Although they had stood up, they still kept their heads down and dared not look this way. He lowered his voice and said to Lu Da, "This place will have more people in the future. Among the refugees, those with good conduct and able to work can be gradually brought in. Helping one person is helpful." Lu Da nodded and asked, "Sir, how many people should we take in?" Li Yan thought for a moment. "No need to rush. Once the granary is ready, we can dig a few wells and build some houses. The area is big enough. We can take our time?" He looked at the sky. The sun was starting to set westward. "Don't use the token unless it's a life or death situation, especially outside. It's even more important not to use it. If people see it, it could cause trouble. Lu Da and Sun Shi nodded together. Li Yan gave a few more instructions before turning to leave. After walking a few steps, he looked back at Lu Da. Remember, don't use it unless absolutely necessary. Lu Da cupped his hands. Rest assured, sir. Li Yan nodded and strode toward the water. Zhao Sen pushed his bamboo pole, and the boat slowly glided into the reed marsh. The wind blew and the reeds rustled softly. When they returned to Tongji Lane, it was already dusk. Li Yan pushed open the door and a fragrant smell drifted from the yard. Under the jujube tree there was a small table, with 3 bowls of plain rice, a large bowl of braised pork, and a pot of wild vegetable soup. Shunshun Liuya peeked out from the kitchen and saw him smiling. Sir is back? The food just finished and I was thinking it's about time you returned. Li Pinger followed behind holding 2 pairs of chopsticks. When she saw Li Yan, her face turned slightly red and she looked down, placing the chopsticks neatly on the table. Li Yan sat under the jujube tree and looked at the bowl of braised pork, thin slices of meat, browned and crispy, oily and fragrant with a tempting aroma. Sit. He waved to the 2 girls. Eat together. Shunshun Liuya responded and sat down at the table. Li Pinger stood still, clutching her clothes nervously. Pinger, sit, Li Yan said again. Only then did Li Pinger slowly sit down, barely on half the bench, her body tense. Shunshun Liuya picked up a piece of meat with her chopsticks and put it into her bowl. Sister Pinger, try this. I made it. Li Pinger looked down at the meat in her bowl, but didn't move. Li Yan picked up his bowl, took a bite of rice, and said, Here there are no strict rules. You'll get used to it over time. Li Pinger looked up, quickly glanced at him, then lowered her head again. She picked up her chopsticks, took the piece of meat, and slowly chewed. Shunshun Liuya looked at her and then at Li Yan. She didn't say anything but scooped another portion of vegetables onto her plate. Li Yan also said nothing and kept eating quietly. After the meal, Li Pinger stood up to clear the dishes. Shunshun Liuya wanted to help, but she refused. She carried her bowl into the kitchen alone. Soon the sound of water washing dishes came from the kitchen. Shunshun Liuya went to the west wing to boil water. Li Yan lay on a recliner under the jujube tree, swinging gently, watching the moon slowly rise. When the water was ready, Shunshun Liuya came over and called him, Husband, the water is ready. Li Yan took a bath in the west wing, changed into clean clothes, and returned to lie under the jujube tree. Shun Liuya stood behind him, resting her hands on his shoulders, gently squeezing. Li Pinger brought over a cup of tea and placed it on a small stool nearby. Then she picked up a fan made of reed and stood on the other side, softly fanning him. The night breeze blew and the jujube leaves rustled. Li Pinger fanned and hummed a gentle tune. It was the melody of Looking at the South River, soft and soothing in the night. Li Yan closed his eyes, enjoying the gentle touch on his shoulders, the cool breeze on his face, and the music in his ears. The moon hung over the jujube tree, bright and white. Suddenly he smiled. Having money is really good. No matter where you are, money makes you the boss. He opened his eyes, took out 2 small silver pieces from his pocket, and handed them to the 2 girls. Here, take this. Shun Liuya was a bit surprised. Husband, this is this month's allowance. I'm giving it to you early, Li Yan said. Tomorrow at the Grand Market of Shangwu Temple, you can go shopping. Buy whatever you like. Shun Liuya took the silver and held it in her hands, her eyes shining. Li Pinger also took it, looked at the silver in her hand, then at Li Yan. Her lips moved, but she didn't speak. Thank you, husband, the 2 girls said together. Li Yan waved his hand and closed his eyes again, continuing to lie down. The next day when Li Yan woke up, sunlight was already filtering through the paper window, casting a soft glow inside the house. Check-in successful. You received supplies 10 tons of sunflower seeds. Sunflower seeds? Li Yan paused, then smiled. These are good. They're fun to snack on when bored. He dressed quickly and pushed the door open. In the yard, Shun Liuya was drawing water from the well, and Li Pinger was busy in the kitchen. Seeing him come out, the 2 girls greeted him together. Good morning, sir. Li Yan nodded and went to the wood storage, opened the door, and with a thought took out a bag of sunflower seeds, a 50-kilogram sack packed in a burlap bag, heavy and solid. Luoya, he called, come here. Shun Liuya ran over and saw the bag, surprised. Sir, what is this? Sunflower seeds, Li Yan said. We'll go to the big market later and take some with us. Luoya nodded, took a small cloth bag, untied the burlap sack, and packed a small portion inside. She was used to the strange things appearing in the wood storage and never asked questions. Just as she finished packing, the yard gate was pushed open and Qin Shu entered. "Good morning, sir." Qin Shu greeted with a smile and a bow. "Today is the big market at the Grand State Temple. Are you going?" Li Yan nodded. "Yes, just right. I'll take them for a walk." Luoya's eyes lit up and Li Pinger peeked out from the kitchen, also looking hopeful. "No more breakfast," Li Yan waved at them. "Let's go out to eat." The four of them left the house and first stopped at the old lady's stall at the alley entrance for breakfast. Congee pancakes, pickled vegetables. Each had a bowl, and they ate warmly. After finishing, they headed north. After walking for about half an hour, they heard a distant commotion. They arrived at the Grand State Temple Market. Today was busier than the previous times. The street was packed with people with stalls lined up side by side selling all kinds of goods. Shouts, laughter, bargaining mixed into a buzzing noise. Qin Shi led the way, turning back to tell Li Yan, "Sir, recently a fierce fighter came to the fighting arena called Wild Dog. He defeated Black 3 and has won many matches." Wild Dog. Li Yan was interested. "What kind of name is that?" Qin Shi lowered his voice. "He's from the western regions. His eyes are yellow and he's very fierce. The people in the market say that the color of his eyes is because he has eaten human flesh." Li Yan frowned. "Let's go see." Qin Shi led them through the crowd to a large tent. The outside of the tent was full of people 3 layers deep, all standing on tiptoe to look inside. Loud cheers came from inside, and some people were shouting something. Li Yan couldn't get in, so he asked Qin Shi to find a spot near the edge. He stepped on a stone and looked inside. Inside, 2 men without shirts were fighting with sticks. One was big and black, the other slim and pale with yellowish eyes that looked a bit scary in the sunlight. The slim one was probably a wild dog. They twisted and turned, pushing each other, their feet stomping on the ground, and their heavy breathing could be heard from far away. The big man tried to throw the other down, but the slim man twisted free and tripped him with a quick move. The big man staggered and almost fell. The crowd gasped. Li Yan took a bag of sunflower seeds from Shun Liuya, opened it, grabbed a handful, and handed some to Qin Shi. "Try some." Qin Shi took a seed, looked at the dark little thing, and didn't know what it was. Li Yan pinched one, put it in his mouth, and bit down. The shell cracked with a crack, and he spat out the shell, chewing the nut inside. "Just eat it like this." Qin Shi copied him, biting a seed and chewing. His eyes lit up. "Sir, this is so tasty." Li Yan grabbed 2 more handfuls and handed them to Shun Liuya and Li Pei Yinger. The 2 girls tried eating, initially not sure how, biting too hard and crushing the seeds. But then they found the right way, and the cracking sounds kept coming. The 4 of them ate sunflower seeds while watching the fight. Inside the tent, the wild dog was winning. He crouched low, grabbed the big man's waist, suddenly used his strength, lifted him up, spun twice, and threw him hard onto the ground with a loud bang. The big man lay there, unable to get up for a while. The crowd cheered loudly. The wild dog stood in the middle of the arena, panting heavily. His yellowish eyes looked around like a real wild dog. Li Yan watched him and remembered what Qin Shi had just said. He has eaten human flesh. He suddenly thought of the refugees outside the city, those lying by the roadside waiting to die, and the wild dogs wandering among the bones. "Let's go," he said, jumping down from the stone and clapping his hands. Qin Shi came over and asked, "Sir, are you not watching anymore?" "No, I'm done watching." The 4 of them went back to watch the cockfighting. 2 roosters fought fiercely, feathers flying everywhere, and the crowd shouted loudly. Then they watched a variety show with people doing flips, wearing big hats, and juggling, all very skillful. Li Yan watched happily and threw a few coins at each act. As they wandered, Qin Liuya tugged at Li Pinger's sleeve and whispered something. Li Pinger nodded, and the 2 girls moved closer to Li Yan. "Sir," Qin Liuya whispered, "we want to go over there and take a look." Li Yan looked in the direction she pointed. There was a rouge stall with bottles and jars, and some women selecting products. "Go ahead," he said with a wave of his hand, "but don't go too far." The 2 girls agreed and held hands as they ran toward the stall. The rouge stall was small, with a low table holding about 10 small porcelain boxes and a few bamboo tubes. The vendor was a woman in her 40s with makeup on her face, smiling warmly to greet customers. Shinli Oya stood nervously in front of the stall, hesitant to reach out. Li Pinger, however, was familiar with this, picked up a small porcelain box, opened it, and sniffed. "Shun Liu Yar, look at this," she said, handing the box over. "This is lip balm. I've been buying it from our family. It's cheap and works well." Shun Liu Yar looked at the bright red paste inside and whispered, "How much for one box?" The woman replied, "Young lady, if you want it, I'll give you a better price. This kind of lip balm costs 40 coins per box. That rouge," she pointed to another small box, "costs 50 coins. This face powder for the face costs 80 coins per box." Li Pinger picked up the face powder, looked at it in the light, then put it down. She took another small box, opened it, and saw white powder inside, very fine. "Can I get less of this powder?" The woman smiled and shook her head. "Young lady, this is high-quality rice powder mixed with spices. 80 coins is already a good price. You can ask other shops, but it won't go below 100 coins." Li Pinger hesitated, took the silver piece Liu Yan gave her yesterday from her pocket, and clenched it in her hand. Shun Liu Yaer whispered nearby, "Sister Pinger, if you want to buy it, just buy it." Li Pinger gritted her teeth, bought that box of powder and another lip balm totaling 120 coins. The shopkeeper woman wrapped the small item in a piece of cloth, handed it to her, and she put it into her pocket, smiling. Shun Liu Yar also bought a box of lip balm for 40 coins, holding it in her hands and looking at it again and again. They were both happy when suddenly they heard a loud noise from afar. It was the sound of orderly footsteps and people shouting something. The crowd on the street started to get restless and moved to the sides. Li Pinger pulled Shun Liu Yar and also moved to the roadside to hide. A group of soldiers in dark blue uniforms quickly ran past holding guns and stood in a line along the street, blocking the crowd. Soon after, several more groups of soldiers arrived, stationed at different intersections, all with serious faces and sharp eyes. Some people in the crowd whispered, "Are they from the palace? Is the Empress Dowager coming to burn incense? I heard that after Lady Li and the officials returned from Weizhou, Lady Li came to the Prime Minister's temple to pray for blessings. No wonder such a big show." Li Pinger pushed Chengxia into the crowd, trying to find over there. Li Yan had already seen the commotion. He stood with Chengxia outside a tea house, watching the soldiers clear the street. A government official in a blue robe stepped out from the crowd wearing a badge on his chest and shouted, "Pointing to the Temple Affairs office here. Idle people, step back. The Empress Dowager is coming. Do not block the way." The crowd moved back a little. Soon from a distance, a procession appeared at the end of the street. Leading the procession were palace maids in colorful clothes holding incense burners with curling smoke. Behind them was a yellow umbrella under which a sedan chair carried a beautiful woman dressed in dark blue, her face not visible. Behind the sedan chair, another group of soldiers with swords marched in neat formation. The entire street was silent, everyone bowing their heads, not daring to look up, except for Li Yan, who was now fearless. He watched the procession slowly pass by. Until the procession was far away, the soldiers removed the barriers and the crowd gradually started to move again. "Li Empress Dowager," Chengxia whispered nearby, "coming to burn incense for the new emperor. The new emperor just ascended the throne, and this is a blessing visit." Li Yan nodded. He looked at the distant procession and then at the lively crowd around him, suddenly understanding something. The great Prime Minister's temple is not just a place for burning incense and praying. It is so close to the palace that the Empress Dowager can come, the Emperor can come, and all the officials and scholars can come, who are the monks that live in the temple. They see the same people every day. No wonder this temple can stand firm during such chaotic times with continuous incense offerings. "Let's go," he said, looking away and speaking to Chen Si. "Find those two women." After pushing through the crowd for a while, they finally found Shun Liuya and Li Pinger near a rouge stall. The two girls were standing there, stretching their necks to look this way. When they saw Li Yan, they hurried over. Young Master Shun Liuya called out, running breathlessly. Li Pinger followed behind, holding her newly bought items, her face flushed. Li Yan looked at them and smiled. Have you finished shopping? Let's go back. The sun was already high and the marketplace was lively. The four of them moved through the crowd, slowly heading back. On August 20th, just before dawn, Li Yan opened his eyes in bed. The quiet courtyard in Tongji Lane had shadows of jujube trees flickering on the paper windows, gently swaying. He turned over and sat up. Check-in successful. Received 10 tons of watermelons. Li Yan paused, then chuckled. This system is quite fitting. Late August is the season for eating melons. He got up, put on his robe, and went to the courtyard. He took out a large, round, bright green watermelon with clear stripes. Holding the melon in one hand, he used his palm as a knife and cut down hard. With a crisp crack, the melon split open, revealing bright red flesh and tiny scattered seeds embedded in the meat. Li Yan pinched a seed and rubbed it. Seedless and delicious. Li Yan bit into the seedless watermelon and smiled, because in a dying age that had given him nothing, he had finally built a place where abundance, safety, and a quiet life belonged to him.